I wake up in the dirt and immediately realize that this is not a dream. First, because my side hurts as if someone chewed on me yesterday and did not have time to finish eating me. Second, because there is no asphalt, no electricity, and no normal air around me, and instead there are stones, someone else's tracks, and a fire pit that went out long ago. Third, the system is already hovering before my eyes and very calmly reports 48 hours until death from hunger, dehydration, and wound infection. An excellent start. I try to sit up and immediately hiss in pain. All right, that means my body is young, but clearly not in shape. I look around and see an empty camp. Not mine, someone else's. Charred splinters, bones, scraps of hides, and tracks are scattered across the ground, and I do not want to examine them too closely because they already make it clear enough. Someone died here or fled very quickly. I do the first thing a normal person does when they are thrown into the past without warning. I start counting what I have. One body, one wound, one flint shard, one dry bone, a little resin on my fingers, and a head that, for some reason, contains knowledge from the future. Not a superpower, not magic, but still better than nothing. I look at the system again. It does not look like a kind mentor. More like an accountant who does not care whether I die today or tomorrow, as long as the report balances. The panel contains only basic lines: survival, resources, nearest threat, possible actions. No beautiful become a god buttons, no free cheats, only a list of what I need to do to avoid becoming a corpse. Food, water, shelter, fire. In any other story, this would sound like a starting quest. Here it sounds like a sentence. I do not get to my feet immediately. First, I crawl into the shade. In the Stone Age, the sun is not romantic. The sun is a function designed to destroy everything weak. If I stay beneath it for too long, my body will simply start giving out. So the first thing I need is not lunch or a weapon. I need my head, or rather, time to use it. I find the tracks of a small bird near the stream, then another set, then tiny prints in the soft mud. Someone comes here often. I do not yet understand what kind of animal it is, but I do not need to. It is enough to know that it is small, cautious, and most likely stupider than me. I make a primitive trap, not because I have a choice, but because I remember. Ancient people did not hunt only by driving a spear straight into something's forehead. Traps, snares, nets, pits, driving structures, all of this existed precisely because capturing prey from a distance saves strength and allows food to be obtained without constant direct risk. And right now, this thought keeps me on my feet better than any motivation. I take 3 thin rods, bend them, secure them with resin, and tighten a loop made from fiber. Slowly, crookedly, clumsily, but it works. Then I find a narrow passage between the rocks. I place the trap there, not in the center, not in plain sight, in a place where small prey will definitely run if frightened. Then I hear a roar, not human, not animal in the usual sense. Too low, too heavy. I freeze. My heart begins pounding as if it wants to break through my rib cage and flee without me. A boar emerges from the bushes. Not a giant, but no gift either. A filthy hide, a thick neck, stiff bristles, tusks that could tear open my thigh with a single charge. And it is looking directly at me, not as a threat, as food. This is when I truly understand a simple thing for the first time. In this world, I have no right to make a mistake. One wrong step and everything will end quickly and very stupidly. I do not run. I cannot run. The boar is faster than me. If I bolt, it will simply close the distance. I raise the bone I picked up near the camp and slowly step backward, very slowly. I lead it toward the place where stones and slippery branches have already been laid out, not directly toward the trap. Too obvious. I lead it in such a way that it wants to speed up on its own. The boar growls and makes its first charge. I throw a clump of dry earth at it. It becomes irritated, lunges more sharply, rushes into the narrow passage, and then my construction is triggered. The stones beneath its feet collapse downward. It loses its balance. Its side catches on the loop, and I strike down at its eye with the flint shard. One blow, a second, a third. It jerks, kicks with its hoof, turns around, breaks a branch, and another bundle of stones crashes down. Not fatal, but enough to make it panic. And now it drives itself into the pit. I do not celebrate. I simply finish it off before it can get back up. And when it is all over, I am shaking as if I have just run halfway across the world barefoot. The system flashes a brief notification: food obtained, materials obtained, first successful hunting cycle completed. Not bad for a man who woke up dying. I quickly butcher the prey, not for aesthetics, out of necessity. If the meat spoils, I will find myself back at the starting point. And in the Stone Age, meat is not merely food, it is time. It is a reserve of strength. It is a chance to survive the next night. And then I remember something else from the future. Early humans probably used fire, not only for cooking, but also for preserving meat. Smoke and drying made it possible to protect prey from spoilage and scavengers, especially when it came to a large kill that provided a weekly or even monthly supply of calories. This is exactly what I need. I look at the remains of the fire pit and understand. Fire is not a luxury. Fire is a refrigerator, an alarm system, and a means of power at the same time. Research on the early use of fire increasingly connects it not only with cooking food, but also with protecting prey and preserving meat for long-term storage. If that is true, then I already know where to begin building my first stable system. I gather dry branches, stones, and a little resin. The first attempts go badly, very badly. The smoke is acrid, the fire goes out, the branches are too damp. I cough, swear, stack everything again, and try again. And at some point, between the third and fourth attempts, the first stable embers appear. There it is, small but real. I place thin sticks on top, not too many so that I do not smother the flame, not too few so that it does not die. It is even strange, fire also requires tactics. If you overfeed it, it will consume everything. If you underfeed it, it will die. I hang the meat on rods above the smoke, not close to the flame, directly above the smoke. I do not need to roast it, but to smoke and dry it, slowly, for a long time, without unnecessary fire. It is entirely possible that this is exactly what early humans did with large carcasses, because a single meal did not justify the cost of maintaining a fire, while drying and smoking provided food for days and weeks ahead. This is the first moment when I feel that I am not merely surviving. I am beginning to build a way to survive. It is at this exact moment that Mara finds me. She emerges from the forest without a sound, tall, sinewy, carrying a spear and wearing an expression as if she has already decided that every stranger either lies or steals. Her gaze catches on the smoke, then the meat, then me. "Who are you?" she asks. I look at her and answer without pathos. "Someone who does not want to die today." She remains silent. Then she notices the fresh boar carcass and whistles. "Alone?" "So far, yes." She shifts her gaze to the trap I just used, and for the first time, something resembling interest flickers across her face. "Weak," she says. "Perhaps, but not stupid." Now that is closer to the truth. I do not offer her food immediately. Trusting too quickly is weakness. Instead, I continue smoking the meat as if she is not here at all. This irritates her more than an argument would. Good. An irritated person thinks worse and makes mistakes more easily. She comes closer. "Did you do this yourself?" "Yes." "How do you know how?" I do not say from the future. I do not say I have technologies in my head. I simply answer, a smart person does not have to reinvent everything every time. She twists her lips as if she dislikes my tone, but she is in no hurry to leave, which means hunger is stronger than pride. A few minutes later, 2 men from her group approach the camp. I understand this from the way Mara tenses. They see my fire, the meat, the trap, and that same ancient feeling that has not changed for centuries is immediately written across their faces. If he has food, then it can be taken from him. One takes a step forward. "Hey, share." The second looks at Mara. "And you are here with him?" I see her grip her spear. If this were an ordinary fight, she would already have lunged forward. But an ordinary fight is exactly what I do not want. I lean slightly and toss dry resin, which I had placed nearby in advance, into the fire. The smoke suddenly thickens and becomes acrid. The men grimace. That already gives me 1 second. A second piece of resin falls onto a heated stone to the side. A flash. Not large, but bright enough to break their rhythm. "Back," I say calmly. They laugh, uncertainly, but they laugh. "Are you threatening us?" "No," I answer. "I am explaining how you are about to be left without food." The first takes another step and immediately steps on a partially cut branch. His foot slips. He falls almost into the same pit where I had hidden bones and stones a little earlier. The second instinctively rushes to help him, and at that exact moment Mara strikes him in the shoulder with her spear. Not fatally, but painfully enough for their formation to fall apart. I do not charge into the fight like a hero. I throw a stone at their feet, another at a face, and a third at a bundle of dry bones at the entrance to the narrow passage. None of this kills, but all of it breaks their confidence. And confidence in the Stone Age is half the victory. A few seconds later, they retreat, leaving behind dirt, anger, and one very important feeling. They have understood that I am not a helpless victim. Mara looks at me, breathing heavily. That was dirty. That was smart. Do you always fight like that? Only when I do not want to die. She snorts and, to my surprise, remains by the fire. She does not leave. She does not attack. She simply sits nearby and watches the smoke dry the meat. There it is, the first real shift. Not friendship, not loyalty, but no longer loneliness either. And then the system gives me another brief notification. I turned risk into a resource. I did not merely survive the threat, I strengthened my position. Someone outside the camp is already watching the smoke. They do not approach. For now, they are only watching. That means word has spread. That means more will come tomorrow. Good. I look at the meat, the fire, the trap, Mara, and the empty space around the camp. And for the first time during all of this, a clear next step forms in my head. I need a base, not a temporary fire, not shelter for one night, not a place where I merely wait out the rain. I need a center around which everything else will begin to gather. Food, tools, people, defense, rules. If I want to speedrun evolution, then first I need to stop being a loner and become a system, and I already have a rough idea of how to do it. The next night, I will not merely survive, I will begin building. Understood. I am writing the next part with the same length and pace, as a complete script block for voiceover. Morning arrives without gentleness. In the Stone Age, morning does not ask whether you are ready. It simply rises onto you with all its weight. I wake from the cold digging into my bones, and the first thing I look at is not the sky or the forest, but the fire. If the fire died during the night, then I'm starting almost from zero again. But it is still smoldering, weak but alive, already good. Mara is sitting nearby, pressing her spear against her knee. She apparently slept just as badly as I did. Only with her, it manifests as calmness. With people like her, anxiety is not on their faces, but in the way they hold their weapons. I stand up, grimace from the pain in my side, and immediately check the bandage. It is dirty, but still holding. That means the infection has not started. For now, I am not dying. Already an achievement. Do you always sleep like that? Mara asks. And do you always watch other people's fires like that? Only the ones that might become mine. A good answer. Direct. Without embellishment. I nod toward the meat drying above the smoke. Take some, but not all of it. She snorts, but tears off a piece. Not greedily, carefully. That means she understands its value. This is already the second time in a short period that she has behaved not like an ordinary raider, but like someone who is beginning to calculate the benefit. I eat a little myself, not because I do not want more, but because hunger is a poor advisor in this world. If I fill my stomach immediately, my body will become sluggish afterward, and I need my head, not sleep. The system remains silent for almost a minute. Then it displays a new window. Available improvements, fire stability, food storage, simplest drying rack. Trap enhancement of remote capture, shelter primitive barrier against wind and animals, and beside it in small letters, every choice requires resources. There it is, my first real choice. Not simply whether to survive or die, but which part of survival I will build first. I look at the meat. If I do not preserve it, then in a day or two, everything will return to the same problem as yesterday. If I build a drying rack, food will stop being a one-time bonus and become a reserve. That means I will be able to think further ahead instead of rushing around every time in search of the next carcass. From the perspective of people from the future, this sounds banal. But in the Stone Age, this is exactly what separates a pack from a system. I choose the drying rack. The system immediately deducts part of the resource. Not for free. I have to pay with meat, resin, time, and one very useful thing, a safe open area near the fire. I cannot afford a good place to rest because the good place is now becoming part of the infrastructure. This is the first price of development. I drag away stones, assemble a taller rack from branches, reposition the meat, and strengthen the flow of smoke. All of it looks crooked, but it works. The smoke goes exactly where it is needed. Not directly into the eyes, not into the ground, above the meat, to where it dries and protects it. Mara watches me with the same directness with which she watched the hunt yesterday. Why so much trouble? You could just eat it. You could, I answer, and run after food again tomorrow. She remains silent. But if you make it so that the food is not only for today, I continue, then tomorrow you can do something else. What? I look at her and do not answer immediately myself, because the answer is already there, but it is too large for the word else. A base. She raises an eyebrow. You keep saying strange words. That is useful. People notice the meaning less. She snorts but does not argue. At that moment, I hear another sound behind me. Not footsteps, not a roar, a light rustling. Someone is crawling through the dry leaves and trying not to reveal themselves. I do not turn around immediately. I simply take the bone in my left hand and the flint in my right. Strangers again, not Mara, not her two men. These ones move differently, more slowly, more carefully. And I recognize that caution instantly. Someone who came not to fight, but to watch. I turn around. 3 people emerge from behind the bushes. 2 men and 1 woman, older than Mara, with spears, bone knives, and wary eyes. They bear no signs of friendship. But they are in no hurry to attack either. That means they have already heard about the smoke and the carcass. One of the men nods toward the drying meat. Did you take that prey from others? I look at him and answer calmly, no, from the boar. The woman narrows her eyes. Alone? I was alone. Mara looks at me, then at them, then back again. She clearly does not like the fact that they are evaluating me like merchandise. But she does not interfere, and that is good. Let them look for themselves first. They walk around the fire without coming too close. They examine the drying rack, the trap, and the traces of my nighttime labor. Then the woman notices something else. I did not merely hang up the meat, I separated it. Meat from the fattier sections is higher up, where the smoke is thicker. Lean pieces are lower down, where the air is drier. It is a small detail, but to them it looks almost like sorcery. Who taught you? She asks. I smirk. No one. That does not happen. It certainly does. One of the men frowns. You are not from our camp. That is obvious. Then why is Mara here? I feel her tense beside me. This question is no longer about me. It is a question about status, about whether she took someone else's prey, about whether she will become a traitor in the eyes of her own people. And this is where I decide not to play the silent game, because I am not an idiot, I say, and neither is she. The man clicks his tongue in displeasure, but remains silent. I continue. You have hunters, you have people, you have legs. But you do not have a system, which means you still run after prey like hungry dogs. That is already rude, and I know it. But sometimes people do not need to like you. They need to be shaken awake. The woman takes a step forward. You have enough courage for 10 men. What about food? Already more than yesterday. She smiles. Very faintly, almost imperceptibly, but I see it. That means she did not come to kill me. She came to understand whether I am useful to her. And there is the first social layer. Not merely survival, already an evaluation of usefulness, already a tribal economy. I nod toward the drying rack. If you want to eat today and 2 days from now, you can help. Help with what? She asks. Bring stones, fiber, dry branches, and do not touch the fire with your hands. The men exchange glances. One clearly wants to tell me to get lost, but the woman raises her palm. And how much will we get for that? A wonderful question. There it is, the real Stone Age. A market already exists here. It simply is not called a market yet. Everything here is decided by exchange. Food for labor, safety for trust, status for usefulness. I feel it almost physically. I look at their faces and answer honestly. Food. Not all of it, but a share. And a place by the fire. The men snort. A place by the fire sounds to them not like a reward, but like nothing. But the woman understands. In this world, a place by the fire is not nothing. It is the right to be near the center. It is access to warmth, attention, and safety. She gives a brief nod. Fair. And now, not only Mara, but 3 more people are standing with me beside the fire and watching the meat dry. I notice Mara glancing sideways at them. She is not pleased, but she is not opposed either. She is assessing them instead. That is important. Allies must also learn how to exist alongside one another. Otherwise, the base will fall apart before it becomes real. While they carry branches, I go to the stream to look for more water and tracks. I need more than just a supply of food. I need a map of the area. And when I descend farther down the slope, the system suddenly displays a new window. Understanding of the environment improved. You have received Beginner Tracker. I smile. Finally, something useful. Not strength, not a strike, but the ability to read the world faster than it can kill you. By the stream, I notice not only the tracks of birds and small prey, but something else as well. Deeper prints pressed into the mud by a heavy paw. This is no boar, no bird. It is something larger, and it is not heading toward the stream. It is moving along it, as though inspecting the territory. I squat down and examine it carefully. 4 toes, a broad pad, a deep claw mark to the side. A predator. Not nearby right now, but close. The system prompts. The nearest serious threat is in the forest belt to the south. If I do not fortify the camp, someone will come here during the night. Excellent. This is what a speed run through evolution looks like. You do not merely take a step forward. Every time, you discover which new beast is already coming toward you from the other side of the map. I return to the fire and immediately see that my new helpers are already busy working. One is carrying stones. The woman is trimming branches. Mara is arguing with a man about the best way to secure the upper crossbar. There is no longer the usual contempt in her voice. Now there is competitiveness. Good. Let them argue. People who argue do not get bored or fall asleep. I show them how to arrange stones for a windbreak so that the flame does not carry the smoke away to the side. Then I explain that the hide should not cover the entire shelter, but only part of it in order to preserve the draft. They do not listen to everything, but they listen enough to do it their own way without breaking the structure. That is exactly what I need. By evening, the base already resembles something meaningful. Not a home, of course, not even a proper encampment yet, but no longer a random fire around which someone happened to stop on their way. Already a place, already a layout. I pause again and look at the system. Food, less than I would like. Water, there is a supply, but not for long. Shelter, partially ready. People, 4. Risks, increased, which means everything is going correctly. Excellent. In this world, growth always means that you have acquired something that can be taken away, and then I decide to take another step. Not out of necessity, out of strategy. I take the bone, the sharp flint, and call Mara over. Look, if this is another one of your strange ideas, I cannot promise that I will not hit you. Then you will like it. I show how a bone can be sharpened and turned into not just a knife, but a tool with a comfortable handle and a longer edge. Not perfect, but better than what they used before. Then I show how to bind a stone fragment to a shaft so that the strike is not only slashing, but also thrusting. Mara remains silent for a long time. Then she takes the blank from me and tests the balance. This can be used for hunting. It can, and in battle. She turns the blade in her hand and looks at me differently now. You are not merely surviving. And what do you think I am doing? She smirks. It is as if you are building your own tribe. I do not answer immediately, because this is the first accurate definition I have heard during all this time. A tribe. Not a camp, not a gang, not a random alliance. A tribe. And that means everyone will have a role. Someone will carry water. Someone will gather branches, someone will hunt, someone will watch the fire. If I do it correctly, everyone will grow within their function. And then my system will stop depending only on me. The strongest person in any society is not the one who hits harder, but the one who knows how to make others more useful. I suddenly understand that this is my path. Not to become the fiercest, not to become the fastest, but to make a structure grow around me. Mara seems to feel it too. She no longer argues. She simply nods and goes to inspect the perimeter with the new blade in her hand. The men continue carrying stones. The woman returns to the drying rack. I remain by the fire and for the first time during all this time, almost breathe out. Almost, because to the south, beyond the line of trees, I see movement again. Not an animal, not someone from my group. Someone else, someone very cautious. He does not come close, but I already know we have been noticed. And that means tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, not merely curious people will come here. Those who want to test how dangerous we have become will come. I look at the smoke, the drying meat, the people by the fire, and the crooked but already functioning system. Then I think about how, in ancient times, the technology of traps and remote hunting was not an insignificant accident, but a sign of growing intelligence and group cooperation. That means I am not going against history. I am simply accelerating it. Today, I saved myself. Tomorrow, I will save the camp. The day after tomorrow, I will make it so that we can no longer be ignored. For now, I simply throw another dry branch into the fire and watch the flame do what it does best. It warms, it conceals, and it promises war to anyone who comes too close. Morning begins with bad news. The first foreign tracks have already appeared near us. Not people with spears and not beasts with fangs, yet only signs that someone saw the smoke and decided to check what kind of insolent idiot had lit a fire here and had not died. I see it immediately because now I look at the ground differently, not as dirt, as a map. On the soft patch near the stream, there are prints that were not there yesterday. The tracks are light, cautious, curve around the bushes instead of charging straight through. That means it is not a hungry beast. It is someone intelligent, and that is worse. At least a beast honestly wants to devour you, but a person will first evaluate, then steal, and then also say that it had always been that way. Mara notices my gaze and frowns. What? We are being watched. She instantly becomes serious. She does that better than asking any question. How many? I do not know yet, but enough for us to stop considering ourselves safe. I am not frightening her. I am simply stating a fact. In the Stone Age, safety is always a temporary illusion, especially when you have fire, meat, and at least some semblance of order. Those are exactly the things that attract strangers. Mara, the others, and I quickly finish the morning chores. I do not allow anyone to sit without a task, not because I like giving orders, but because people with nothing to do begin thinking too much, and unnecessary thoughts during survival almost always turn into stupidity. The woman from yesterday's group of 3, whom I have already mentally started calling the Elder, brings a bundle of branches and throws it beside the drying rack. Here? Yes, but do not break the long ones. We need ones like these, straight. She narrows her eyes. You do everything too carefully. The one who survives longer often does exactly that. She smirks, but does not argue. Good. I can already see that she has what I need for the system. Discipline without unnecessary questions. Not loyalty yet. For now, only a useful form of respect. The men carry stones and adjust the edge of the barrier. Mara argues with them about how best to position the upper crossbar so that the wind does not blow the smoke away. I deliberately do not intervene immediately. Let them develop their own sense of involvement. People become more attached to what they build themselves. By noon, the drying rack no longer looks as crooked as it did yesterday. Not beautiful, of course. Beauty is still far away here. But it is no longer a random stand. It is a structure. And at that moment, I decide to take another step. I take a bone, a flint fragment, and a thin strap of dry fiber out of the bag, then call Mara over. Watch carefully. She frowns. If this is another one of your strange schemes, I will hit you afterward. That will be fair if I am wrong. I show how a bone can be sharpened into a short cutting blade without breaking it with the first strike. Then I take the flint and use resin and tight wrapping to secure it to a shaft so that it becomes not merely a knife, but a spear with a piercing edge and a cutting spike. Nothing difficult for a person from the future, but for the Stone Age, this is already a step forward. Mara watches my hands carefully. Will it hold? If you do not strike a tree with it the first time, it will hold. Then it is not the best combat tool, but it can be made quickly. She takes the blank, tests the balance, makes a couple of sharp movements through the air, and immediately understands the point. Lighter than my old spear, and cheaper. She raises her eyes. You think like a hunter, but you speak like an old woman counting her last nuts. Because the one who survives is not the one who is louder. It is the one who keeps counting longer. She smirks, almost respectfully. The system immediately records the success. New skill, simplified crafting mindset. The next stage of weapon development is available with a sufficient amount of materials. Now that is pleasant. Not a blow to the head, but systemic usefulness. I feel a principle beginning to form in my mind. If I give people a tool, they will be able to do their work faster. If I give them work, they will begin to consider it their own. If I give them my goal, they will become part of the tribe. That is exactly what I need. By evening, we have another guest. This time, he is neither secretive nor timid. He is a large man with broad shoulders and a scar running across his chin. Behind him are 2 teenagers carrying hunting bags. The man walks directly toward the fire and looks at me as though deciding whether to devour me with his gaze now or later. I heard you know how to make food that does not spoil overnight. There it is, the real reason. Not curiosity, not friendship, practicality. People come to places where food turns from chance into a reserve. I nod toward the drying rack, not overnight, over several days, if everything is done correctly. He narrows his eyes, and if it is done incorrectly, then everything will rot, and you will die just as you did before. He laughs briefly and harshly. Not a bad answer. Mara stands to the side and already has her spear ready. The elder is tense too. Everyone understands that this guest did not come merely to look. He is testing how useful I am, and possibly how weak I am. Which camp are you from? I ask. The northern one. Then you saw the smoke too. He does not answer, but there is no need. The answer is written on his face. I look at him and decide not to evade. If you came to ask for food, first show what you can bring, he grunts. And if I brought nothing, then you are not asking. You are bargaining. He clearly likes that tone. At least he stops looking at me as prey and starts looking at me as a problem. There is a pack of small animals in our forest, fast, skittish. We cannot catch them properly. I immediately understand that he is talking about the very type of prey that is better caught not with force, but through remote capture. And then I remember the actual data. In ancient times, small prey was often taken not by driving a spear straight into it, but with traps, nets, snares, and driving structures, because such methods preserve the fur and damage the carcass less. The more I think about it, the more clearly I see where all of this is going. Then you are hunting in completely the wrong way, I say. The man furrows his brow. And you know another way then? Yes. He takes a step closer. Show me. I do not answer immediately, because this is no longer a request. It is an offer of exchange. And this is where I understand for the first time that development will proceed not only through what I create myself, but also through the fact that I begin selling knowledge. Not as a commodity in the modern sense, as power. In the Stone Age, knowledge of how to catch food without risk is almost equal to a resource. I will show you, I say, but not for free. He laughs again, more sincerely this time. And what do you want? I look around at my branches, the drying rack, the people by the fire, and the wound in my side that still aches. Then I look directly at him. Stone, fiber, and 2 people for 2 days. For what? For a new perimeter. He frowns. A perimeter? Yes. If you cannot protect the camp with force, you change the place where the enemy will want to attack. You force him to go where it benefits you. Mara immediately raises her head. She likes this. The elder also listens more attentively. The man remains silent for a long time. Then he nods. If you do not deceive me, you will get everything you ask for. If I deceive you, you will understand it anyway. He smiles with the corner of his mouth. That is it. We have a deal. And then, for the first time, I feel how not only the camp, but everything around it is changing. Because now they will talk about me not as a strange loner by the fire, but as a man who knows how to make useful things. And that is dangerous, because usefulness quickly becomes suspicious, and suspicion is already one step from respect to fear. While the guests leave, I quickly walk around the camp perimeter and examine the tracks. On the southern side, there is a lowland where the grass bends beneath the wind. On the northern side, there is a rocky ridge. And if dry branches, stones, and noise points are placed correctly, the route to the camp can be made inconvenient for animals and dangerous for strangers. It is not a fortress yet, but it is no longer merely a fire. I return and begin explaining. We place stones here, we make a narrow passage here, we leave soft mud here, dry branches outside, so that someone steps on them and reveals themselves. If they come at night, you will hear them before you see them. Mara listens with narrowed eyes. This already looks like a trap for people. Exactly. She nods. I like it. The elder does not smile, but she is clearly evaluating its usefulness. The men begin carrying stones without unnecessary conversation. The teenagers become involved too, and this is an important moment. Children and young people always find it easier to accept a new arrangement if it gives them a role. I show how thin fibers can be stretched between the stones, not to kill, to tangle feet, reveal a presence, and slow someone down. Then I explain that every obstacle must do 2 things: slow the enemy and reveal his movement. Because in the darkness, what matters more is not the force of the blow, but the fact that you learned about it before everyone else. Mara suddenly asks, "And what if the animal simply jumps over it?" I smirk. "Then it is already not in the place where I wanted it, and that is still useful." She nods. Logical. The system displays a new notification, perimeter fortified. The first level of camp defense is available. There it is. I can almost physically feel the base beginning to form. Not in the sense of beautiful walls, not yet, in the sense of the logic of space. There is a center, there is a storage place, there is a hunting place, there is a place where a stranger will come and make a mistake. And at that exact moment, I notice movement to the south again. Not close, but enough to make my shoulders tense. Someone is watching us, no longer merely from afar, already with interest. I pretend not to have noticed anything and continue sorting the stones. But calculations are already running through my mind. If it is a loner, he will leave. If it is a scout, he will return with others. If it is a hunter from a neighboring camp, then they will begin testing how dangerous we are. And that means tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, we will have to face our first real test, not from an animal, but from people. And people here are more dangerous than animals precisely because they know how to wait. The sun sets. The smoke rises straight upward. The meat hangs in the correct density. The people by the fire no longer look like a random crowd. Everyone is busy with a task. Everyone already knows where to go. And this is only the beginning. I look at them and think about how civilization is built. Not with towers, not with kings, not with manifestos, with the simple fact that someone managed to make sure the food did not rot, the fire did not die, and the people did not scatter. Everything else is built on top afterward. The harsh stone world does not change in a single day. But if you know how to preserve resources and use space, you are already half a step ahead of everyone else. Mara comes closer and stands beside me. "You are looking like that again, as though you are counting something?" I am. "What exactly?" I do not turn away from the fire. "How much remains before I have my first real tribe?" She grunts. "And?" "Close." For some reason, standing beside her is easier, not because she is gentle, quite the opposite, because she is honest. And in this world, that is almost as rare as a full stomach. The night is only beginning, and I already have a fire, a drying rack, a perimeter, and people who are listening for the first time not because they are obliged to, but because it benefits them. This is no longer surviving alone. This is already the beginning of management. Morning begins not with dawn, but with a problem. The wind strengthened during the night, and one corner of the drying rack became warped, causing some of the meat to hang lower than necessary. If I had not woken up in time, we would have lost almost half of the reserve. And in the Stone Age, losing food is not merely an inconvenience. It is a setback, hunger, and the same cycle again that I have only just begun escaping. I immediately stand up, adjust the crossbar, and check the smoke. The smoke must flow evenly, not too thickly and not too low. If it settles below, the meat will not dry, but suffocate and spoil. If it drifts to the side, we will simply waste our time. The whole thing depends on small details, and that is irritating because I understand perfectly well. In this world, every great undertaking begins with an unpleasantly small mistake. Mara is already standing nearby, gloomy and sleep-deprived. "You got up before everyone again, because if I do not get up, we will lose some of the food." She looks at the crossbar, then at the meat, then at the branches. "You speak as though the whole camp is one large trap." It is. She snorts, but does not argue. And that is almost praise. While I repair everything, the elder comes to us again. This time, she is accompanied not by 2 men, but by an entire group of young people, 3 teenagers, and another younger woman. I immediately understand that this is no longer a random visit. People begin gravitating toward places where there is warmth, food, and order, not because they like my face, but because my camp has stopped looking like a temporary fire and has begun looking like a place where one can survive another day. The elder stops at the edge of the fire. "We brought stone, as agreed." I nod. "Good. First, put the stone here, then the fiber there, and do not get too close to the smoke." One of the teenagers, thin and far too curious, immediately reaches toward the fire, and I catch his hand before he manages to touch the smoldering edge. "Do not touch it." I was not going to. Everyone says that 1 second before getting burned. He pulls his hand back in embarrassment. Mara smirks. The teenager becomes angry, but does not argue. Good. Better that he learns to listen now than loses his fingers later. The elder looks at our new blanks and seems to be calculating what exactly is useful here and what can be taken back to her camp. You are building a place where meat can be stored for a long time? Yes. And does it really work? I nod toward the drying rack. As long as the meat is hanging, it works. If everything is done correctly, it will not rot quickly. She remains silent for a long time. Then she suddenly says, "Our food spoils too often. We kill an animal and still eat it quickly before it begins to stink." There it is, a direct problem. Small in words, enormous in life. And I immediately understand that this is where my next lever of influence lies. Whoever controls the preservation of food controls not only people's stomachs, but also their time. Then you lose part of the prey, I say. Yes. And because of that, you hunt even more. She nods. Yes. Then you are constantly running in circles. She does not argue, and that is better than any agreement. I decide not to limit myself to a single camp. If my base wants to survive, it needs materials, not only food, but also things that make food and hunting more stable. That means we need to gather stone, fiber, wood, and other small things from which a mature system is formed. I give everyone a task, not an abstract one, a specific one. The teenagers go to gather straight branches. The woman goes to inspect the soft fiber near the water. The men carry out stones and build a low barrier on the southern side. The elder remains by the drying rack because she is the best at maintaining the rhythm and does not touch things that may be dangerous. Mara glances at me. "You are already giving orders. I am assigning roles. Is that what it is called now?" If people like what they are doing, they are less likely to want to leave. She grunts. "You are unpleasantly intelligent." That is useful too. While everyone is busy, I walk along the edge of the camp. I need to find a place where I can build not merely a barrier, but the first proper perimeter. Not a wall in the sense of a fortress that is still far away. I need a space that will force a stranger to move more slowly, make noise, and reveal himself ahead of time. And then I come across what I was looking for. A low rocky ridge stretches toward the forest, and beside it there is a narrow natural passage. If dry branches, stretched fibers, and a couple of heavy stones are added there, it will create a point where anyone attempting to approach secretly will begin revealing themselves through noise and movement. It is not a deadly trap. It is better. It is a warning and a delay at the same time. I stand over this strip of ground and suddenly understand clearly that ancient hunting systems were far more complex than merely placing sticks and waiting. Research on ancient traps shows that such structures could have been part of a broad network, driving, restricting routes, forcing an animal to move along a particular path, creating a point of vulnerability. And this is already my language, not strength, the architecture of movement. When I return to the camp, an argument is already underway. Mara and one of the men are arguing about how to position the stones on the southern side. He wants to make it lower and wider. She wants it higher and narrower. I look at both options and understand that they are not arguing about the stones. They are arguing about whose opinion will become more important. I approach and squat between them. Do it this way. A narrow entrance on the outside, widening on the inside. The man furrows his brow. Why? Because outside, the enemy slows down, while inside you gain space to see him and strike first. Mara nods almost immediately. That is better. The man grumbles, but backs down. Already good. Let him get used to decisions being based not on seniority, but on usefulness. At that exact moment, the system displays a new message. Camp perimeter improved. The first level of a permanent base is available. Function unlocked. Accumulation of crafting experience. I freeze for a second. There it is. Not merely a fire, not merely a camp, already a base. Primitive and crookedly assembled, perhaps, but now it exists not only for this evening. It can remain, develop, and be repeated. That is more important than it seems. Because now we have a memory of space. People know where the stones lie, where the meat hangs, where they must not make noise, and where they need to work. And as soon as a place begins to be remembered by bodies, it becomes territory. By evening, new people arrive. They do not literally arrive, they come along the road, but for the Stone Age, it is almost the same thing. There are two of them. Both carry heavy bags. One has a scar on his cheek, the other has a crooked knife. They stop at the edge of the camp and do not enter immediately. And that is important too. Someone who is uncertain is no longer an aggressor, but a potential participant. "Is this where that smoke is?" the scarred man asks. "If you mean the meat, yes," I answer. If you mean the one who knows how to make meat that does not stink after one night, is that also you? If you are not lying, then yes. He looks at the camp and sees everything at once: the fire, the drying rack, the perimeter, and people busy working. It is obvious even to the naked eye. This is no longer merely a gathering. Order is beginning to appear here. There are small animals in the southern lowland, says the second man, nervous and far too thin. Fast. We caught them 3 times and it was still not enough. I immediately understand that they need exactly our next subject. Small prey really is easier and more profitable to capture remotely with snares, loops, traps, and nets. And this is not an accident, but one of the signs of the cognitive and social development of ancient groups. Then you need traps, not heroism, I say. The scarred man grunts. And you know how? I do not answer immediately. Instead, I ask them to bring thin fiber, a couple of flexible rods, and a stone with an even edge. When they bring all of it, I sit directly on the ground and begin constructing a snare, calmly, without unnecessary words. The loop, tension, attachment point, concealment, and testing its movement. I do all of this slowly so that they see not the result, but the process, because knowledge is more valuable when it is understood, not when it is simply received. Mara watches attentively. Will this catch a small animal? If it follows its usual trail, yes. And if it does not, then you set another trap. The scarred man smirks. So not one attempt, but a network. Exactly. The word network catches their attention. I see it in their eyes, because a network is no longer a single stroke of luck. It is a system in which one point does not have to decide everything. And the more I think about it, the more clearly I understand. I must build not only a camp, but a network of people, tasks, and small technical solutions. When I finish the first loop, the little teenager, the same curious one, asks, "And what if a person, not an animal, gets caught in the trap?" I raise my eyes. Then he will understand very quickly that he went where he should not have. Mara snorts with laughter. The scarred man frowns but smiles too. The elder, who was standing nearby, looks carefully at the loop and suddenly says quietly, "This can replace 2 hours of hunting." "Maybe," I answer, "if it is set correctly." And then I hear a sound behind me that I do not like at all. Not footsteps, not the cracking of branches, a low, barely noticeable rustling across the dry grass. I do not turn around immediately, but only place my palm on the ground and feel a slight vibration. Someone is crawling toward the camp. The system, as if mocking me, issues a brief warning. Unknown presence near the southern strip. I do not show any reaction. I simply stand up as though I am about to demonstrate another construction and make an inconspicuous gesture to Mara. She catches it instantly. This is no longer merely intuition. We are beginning to work as a group. I walk toward the southern side under the pretext of showing where the new barrier will be. In reality, I want to see who is hiding there. But what I find causes not fear, but cold understanding. A stranger is sitting in the bushes, young, thin, almost a boy. He is watching the camp and apparently thought no one had noticed him. He was wrong. Mara is already nearby. The scarred man is on the other side, and the elder moves silently in an arc. He realizes that he has been caught and immediately begins backing away. "Stop," I say calmly. He freezes. I look at him and understand. The person before me is not a killer, a scout. Perhaps from a neighboring camp, perhaps from the same group that saw our smoke yesterday. He is too young, too cautious, and too frightened to be an assault force. But people like that are exactly the ones who carry news. "Who sent you?" I ask. He remains silent. Mara takes a step forward, and he immediately shrinks back. "Do not," he says. "Then answer." He swallows and finally blurts out, "They say a man has appeared here who knows how to make food that does not spoil." There it is. The rumor has spread, quickly, even too quickly. That means our first improvements are already working like a magnet. People will be drawn here either for knowledge or for prey. And now I will have to decide which of them will become allies and which will become problems. I do not threaten the boy. There is no need yet. Instead, I ask another question. "How many of you are there?" I do not know. You do. You are simply afraid to say. He remains silent, and that is already an answer. Mara watches me very carefully. She is waiting for me to order them to seize or hit him. But I already understand that if we handle everything brutally, we will quickly turn into a small gang that knows only how to defend itself. And I do not want to build a gang. I want to grow the core of a future tribe. Tell your people, I say calmly, that we do not kill those who come to bargain. But if you come with weapons, traps, and lies, not all of you will leave. The boy looks at me with wide eyes. You are letting me go? For now, yes. He clearly does not believe it, and he is right not to. In the Stone Age, kindness without calculation is stupidity. But I am not releasing him out of softness. I am doing it because he will now spread the correct rumor, and it will not be that I am weak. It will be that I have fire, food, traps, and people who listen. That is already a different currency. When he leaves, Mara turns toward me. Why did you let him go? Because we need him alive to tell the truth. What truth? I look toward the southern strip of forest, that we are no longer a random fire. We are beginning to become a force. She remains silent for a long time, then slowly nods. Then they will come again. Yes. And what will you do? I smirk, the same thing as always. Make them make a mistake, she grunts, but this time there is no longer any doubt on her face, only readiness. Night descends over the camp, and for the first time I feel not merely exhaustion, but a strange, almost dangerous feeling. It resembles power. Not the kind given by titles, the kind that appears when there are already people, order, fire, and the first rules around you. When a stranger sees not a loner, but a system. We are still very far from a real tribe, but now I know the main thing. If we continue at the same pace, we can grow this place into not a camp of survivors, but the first real center of power. And tomorrow I will begin thinking about how to attract those who can become part of my system and how to prevent those who come with bad intentions from destroying everything with the first blow. The next day, the camp no longer looks like a temporary stop. It is still crude, uneven, and uncomfortable, but now it has a rhythm. There is a place where meat is dried. There is a place where stone is stored. There is a place where no one has the right to simply walk through the fire. And most importantly, people already know that everyone has a role. I wake before everyone else, as always, and the first thing I check is not the people, but the perimeter. No one slipped through during the night, but that does not mean no one was watching. On the southern side, the grass is slightly flattened, and there is a fresh track near the rocky ridge. Someone approached, not right up close, but near. That means the rumor about our camp has already spread farther than I expected. The system issues a brief, almost dry notification. External environmental activity has increased. Translated into human language soon, they will either start copying us or come to rob us. Both are dangerous in their own way. Mara is already sitting by the fire, turning the new spear I made yesterday in her hands. She does not say thank you. She has no habit of expressing gratitude for things she considers useful by default. But I see that she has already become accustomed to keeping this tool nearby. And in her case, that is almost the same as trust. You are looking at the ground again, she says without raising her head. Because news is written there, she grunts. Very strange news, but truthful. I help the elder light the fire in a narrower and more protected place. Now we have not merely a fire, but a designated center around which we can work. This immediately has an effect. The smoke flows more evenly, there is less wind, and the meat dries better. And for the first time, this allows me to deal with what I had postponed because of the lack of hands' real resource distribution. I gather everyone around the fire, even the teenagers, even those two newcomers who arrived last night and have not yet completely understood how everything works here. When people do not know the rules, they begin either to fear or to argue. I need them first to listen, then to start working, and only then to argue. Listen, I say. We will no longer have one common pile of everything. The noise dies down. Even Mara raises her head. Why? One of the men asks. Because a common pile means a common loss. One person takes more, another hides less. A third spoils the meat because he does not know where it belongs. If we do not want to starve, we need clearly organized supplies. The elder narrows her eyes. And how do you see it? I take a pebble and draw a simple diagram on the ground. Nothing complicated. A circle for the fire, a separate area for meat, a separate one for stone and wood, a separate one for water, and another one for those who work with tools. It is not a city, but it is no longer disorder either. For ancient people, such zones would mean something more than convenience. This is already spatial organization, and it is directly connected with survival, joint work, and protection from nighttime threats. Everyone is responsible for their own place, I say, and everyone knows what they receive for their work. The teenager with curious eyes immediately asks, "And what if someone does not work?" I look at him. "Then he does not eat first." Even Mara nods at that. Good. We are already developing the main principle, not equality, but contribution. The scarred man who arrived yesterday grunts. "That sounds like punishment." "It sounds like life," I answer. "In nature, no one feeds someone who does nothing. The only difference is that we have a chance to organize all of it." He remains silent, and that is already a victory. When an argumentative person stops arguing, he has either agreed or has not yet figured out how to object. In both cases, I gain time. Then I show them the new task, processing the meat, not merely hanging it above the smoke, but separating the pieces by thickness, fat content, and position above the fire. Early sources and modern research provide increasing evidence that smoke and drying were an important part of food preservation, not merely a way to add flavor. For me, that means one simple thing. I am not reinventing a lost skill. I am simply making it systematic. While watching me, the elder suddenly asks a question. "Why are you doing all of this at all?" I do not answer immediately, because her question is not about drying. It is about motive, about what makes one person spend his strength on strangers. Because if I do everything alone, I finally say, "I will die alone." She looks at me for a long time, then she quietly nods. That is honest. At that exact moment, I understand that not merely a group, but a distribution of roles is beginning to form among them. Mara is strength and speed. The elder is discipline. The scarred man is a hunter with a practical mind. The teenager is rapid adaptation. And another boy, thin and silent, has already been with us for a week, carrying water and never asking a single unnecessary question. He is still on the periphery, but people like that usually either become the most useful or break first. I decide to test what everyone is worth. Today, everyone is going on an expedition, I say. Mara narrows her eyes. Where? To the southern lowland. There is small prey there, and I want to see how you work, not alone, but together. The scarred man immediately becomes animated. With a net? Almost. Traps and driving. The elder crosses her arms. Small prey requires less trouble, but there is less meat too. That is, if you hunt the old way, I answer. But if you hunt correctly, one day using a network can bring more than 2 days of running around. These are not merely words. I already know that small prey is often more profitable if captured remotely and systematically. Ancient hunters used such methods precisely because they reduced risk and could provide stable results in forests and scrubland. And in my case, this is also the perfect reason to test whether people can work in coordination. We set out closer to noon. I walk first, but not as a leader, as the one who knows the route better than the others. Mara stays on the left, the scarred man on the right, the elder behind us, and the teenagers and the thin boy spread out between them. Already not bad. Order is beginning to appear on its own. The southern lowland greets us with damp grass, small bushes, and animal tracks. I immediately notice a path not wide, but frequently used. Small prey likes to repeat its routes when the surroundings are safe. That means this is exactly where we need to build the system. I drive in the first stick, then the second. I stretch fiber between them. Low, almost at paw level. Then I make another loop to the side, and another at a fork between the bushes. This is not one large trap. It is a field of probability. The more points there are, the greater the chance that the animal will stumble into the right one on its own. Mara watches and furrows her brow. Will it work? If you do not start making noise like a herd of pigs, yes. She snorts. You speak to people even worse than I do, but you understand me. She looks at me for a couple of seconds and suddenly smiles with the corner of her mouth. Very briefly, but for her, that is almost laughter. When everything is ready, I explain the task. One person drives them gently, the second blocks the route, the third does not run forward until the prey enters the loops. No heroics, only coordination. And if the animal escapes? The teenager asks. Then you know where it went, I answer. That is also a result. He nods, although he does not seem to have fully understood. But at that moment, I see something else. People are beginning to think of prey not as a goal, but as a process. That is already a step toward a system. And it is precisely such steps, invisible to most people, that make history powerful. The first prey does not appear immediately. We sit in silence for almost an hour. Then the bushes twitch, a light rustling, then another. A small animal enters the narrow passage, and at that exact second, one of the loops catches its paw. It jerks, crashes into the side binding, becomes tangled in the grass, and the scarred man carefully blocks the exit from the other side. Mara moves quickly and without unnecessary movements. Now? Quietly now, I say. She approaches carefully, pins the prey with her spear, and then quickly finishes the job. That is all. No chase, no unnecessary noise, and most importantly, no injuries. The system issues a brief message: successful use of remote capture. There it is, not merely prey, confirmation of the method. The scarred man blinks. And that is all? That is all, I answer. Were you expecting a battle? Usually, yes. Usually that is expensive. We return not merely with one carcass, but with the understanding that the method works, and that is more important than the prey itself. Because one successful day can be blamed on luck, 2 on coincidence, 3 already means skill. On the way back, I notice something else. The camp is no longer empty. 2 newcomers are sitting by the fire, and beside them, a teenager is adjusting the stand. That means people have begun staying not only for food, but for the place. This is a very important transition. First, they come to you for meat, then for safety, then for belonging, and then a small but very noticeable thing happens. When the elder sees us returning, she does not ask how much we caught. She first checks whether everyone is unharmed. Only then does she look at the prey. This is already a sign that the group is beginning to perceive itself as a single whole. In the evening, while we butcher the carcass and hang a new row of meat above the smoke, Mara approaches me from the side. Do you truly think something larger can be made from this? I am already making it. I do not mean the camp. I look at her. Then what? She nods toward the people around us. Us, there it is, the very question that sooner or later arises in every group. Who are we now? Merely survivors? Allies? A camp? A tribe? I do not answer immediately, because this is not only about her, it is also about me. I came from the future with a head full of schemes and knowledge of how the world works. But here, in the dirt and smoke, everything is decided very differently. Not by theory, by people. If we last another week, I say, this will no longer be a random encampment. Then what will it be? I look at the fire, the drying rack, the perimeter, and the people who are now, without discussing it, each busy with their own part of the work. Then it will become a place people want to preserve. She remains silent, then quietly answers, I like that. And this is perhaps the first time I hear from her, not merely an acknowledgement of usefulness, but a desire to be part of something larger. Night descends quickly. No movement can be seen to the south anymore, but I know someone is still watching. Let them. Let them see the smoke, the fire, the order, and the people who do not scatter. Let them think we are merely a group around a fire. Tomorrow, I will show them better traps. The day after tomorrow, I will begin preparing a place to store tools. And after that, if we are lucky, we can begin thinking not about the camp, but about how to hold territory and attract those who can become part of my system. Because now I understand the main thing. A tribe does not begin with numbers. A tribe begins with common rules, common food, and a common rhythm. And we almost have that already. By morning, I already understand. Our camp has stopped being merely a place where someone warms themselves by the fire. It is becoming a point people come to observe, evaluate, and, if they are lucky, join. That is good. And it is also dangerous, because the more useful you become, the faster others try either to copy you or take you away. I stand by the perimeter and look at the southern path. Yesterday's track is still visible. That means the strangers did not merely pass by. They returned, checked, and most likely discussed us among themselves. In a world where fire and meat are no longer merely food, but a means of keeping people together and driving away the nighttime threat, rumors spread faster than water through sand. Mara appears beside me, almost silently. You are looking again at a place where there is no one. Not no one, I answer. For now, only the future. She twists her lips. You speak as though you have already decided everything. Not everything, only that we need the next level. She smiles with one corner of her mouth. Do you seriously call these levels? What else should I call them? We already have a fire, a drying rack, a perimeter, and people who do not fight among themselves every minute. This is no longer an encampment. It is almost a base. The word base caught on among us faster than I expected. People like naming a place where they feel order, even if the word itself is still unfamiliar. And at that exact moment, I understand that the weakest point in our system is not the walls or the food. The weakest point is material. We do not have enough good stone, long fiber, resin, and wood for more reliable constructions. That means it is time to obtain not only meat, but infrastructure as well. I gather the people around the fire and announce the next expedition. Today, we are not going for food. Today, we are going for materials. The noise immediately dies down. Even the teenagers stop whispering. The elder asks first, "Does that mean far away?" Yes, but not too far. Along the stream, there are slopes with suitable stone and dry roots. And on the western side, flexible rods can be found if we are willing to walk a little farther. The scarred man, who has already managed to prove several times that he can keep a cool head, narrows his eyes. And what are we building? I do not answer immediately, because this is no longer merely an expedition. It is a test of whether we can work as a group beyond the perimeter, where the protection of the fire is no longer present. A storage place, and better traps, I finally say. We need constructions that do not break in the first wind and do not collapse during the first panic. Mara nods immediately. Finally, something normal. The thin boy, whom I have still been mentally calling Shadow, suddenly asks timidly, "Will there be animals there?" "There will," I answer, "but animals are everywhere here. The only difference is whether you are prepared for them." That does not comfort him very much, but it is honest, and in my position, honesty is more useful than beautiful promises. We set out immediately after brief preparations. I take the bone knife, a couple of flint blanks, a fiber strap, and a bag of resin. Mara walks on the left, the elder behind us. The scarred man guards the rear, and the teenagers carry empty bundles for transporting materials. Even this already looks like a small team rather than a random crowd. Along the way, I explain that we need to look not merely for stones, but for the correct stones, those that split easily but produce a sharp edge. Not just any wood, but straight and flexible rods. Not just any fiber, but fiber that stretches and does not tear immediately. None of this is new to people who live by hunting and crafting, but before, they used all of it separately, without a common system. "It is as though you have done all of this before," the elder says. I shrug. I had enough other people's mistakes in my head. She does not seem to understand completely, but accepts the answer. And that is normal. In the Stone Age, people do not necessarily need to understand the source of knowledge. They need to see its usefulness. As we walk, I notice an important thing. The land around the camp is already beginning to feel not like wild emptiness, but like an extension of our territory. Where there was once merely a forest, there is now our path, our water, our lowland. When a group develops language for describing space, its first real border appears as well. By the middle of the day, we reach an area where stone protrudes from the ground in small layers. This is exactly what I need. Not enormous boulders, but material for blanks and supports. I show them where to look for thinner layers. The scarred man immediately gets involved, drops to one knee, and begins feeling the surface. "This one will work," he says, tapping the stone with a bone. "Yes, but we also need one like this," I answer, pointing at a thinner layer. It is easier to make an edge from it. Mara is already chopping at a root nearby, pulling out a long, flexible bundle. "What is this for?" "For binding traps, and for new frames." She understands almost immediately. To set not one loop, but several. Exactly. This is not merely an improvement. It is a transition from a single trap to a section, and a simple system is already forming in my head. If several loops are placed at different heights and with different tension, it will be possible to capture not only small prey, but more cautious prey as well. Ancient remote capture techniques, as research shows, worked precisely because they made it possible to hunt small and skittish animals without direct encounters, and the result depended not on the strength of a single hunter, but on intelligent placement and overall logic. We work almost silently. People become accustomed to things when they understand the task. That is probably the most convenient thing about construction. It has a physical meaning. A stone is either in place or it is not. Fiber is either stretched or torn. A mistake is visible immediately. When the baskets of materials begin filling up, I stop the work and say, "Now the most important thing, do not carry it carelessly. Everything will weigh more than it seems." The teenager immediately snorts. "Stones are always heavy." "Not the stones," I answer. "The incorrect load." He blinks. "What is that?" "The thing that breaks your back before the enemy manages to reach you." The scarred man laughs, and for the first time, his laughter contains not mockery, but acknowledgement that although I am strange, I am useful. The journey back takes longer than it should. But I deliberately do not rush the people. What matters to me is not merely bringing the materials back, but getting them used to the fact that results require time. In my future, this would sound banal. Here, everyone knows how to want prey quickly, but not everyone knows how to build a system in which prey returns again and again. When we return to the camp, an unexpected sight greets me. Two new people are sitting by the fire, a man and a woman. They are not hiding or arguing, but simply waiting. The elder is already speaking with them. That means while we were gone, they came and offered an exchange. This is how a group grows, not by command, but by attraction. Mara drops the bundle of rods and asks gloomily, "Who are they?" The elder answers instead of me, "They came from the western path." They have dry fiber and another hide. They want food and are asking whether they can stay. I look at them and immediately understand. These are no longer random visitors. This is a test. If I accept them too easily, weakness. If I refuse too harshly, I will lose people and materials. And I need more than just hands. I need the reputation of a place where someone can come and receive a place if they are useful. I step closer. "What can you do?" The man, sturdy and laconic, answers, "Hold a net." The woman, on the contrary, speaks quickly. "I know where good fiber grows, and I can weave loops." "Now that is interesting." I nod. "Then you arrived at the right time." Mara looks at me with a slight squint. She senses that I am already turning the camp into something more than merely a shelter, and she still seems to like it, although she is not ready to admit it aloud. The system records a new increase in resources, expansion of the group, increased efficiency in gathering materials, and then I understand that everything really is beginning to come together. We are gaining not only hunters, but also people who can do what I do not have time to do myself. This is already a division of labor. Nothing grand, but this is exactly how civilization begins. Not with a sword, with a useful function that is repeated. I immediately put the newcomers to work. The man receives fiber and the task of checking the tension of the new traps. The woman sits beside the elder and begins weaving loops. Mara watches distrustfully at first, but then sees that they are not idling and relaxes a little. "You did not even test them," she whispers to me while we carry stones. "I will test them later, and if they are lying, then their lie will quickly become visible. That is the point of the system." She snorts. "You like it when everything is tied to a system." "Because otherwise everything is tied to my back, and that is inconvenient." She laughs openly now, briefly, but sincerely. Closer to evening, I finally reach what I wanted to inspect from the very beginning, a small hollow near the rocky ridge that can be turned into a storage area. Not a complete storehouse, of course, but a place where dry branches, spare fiber, flint, and finished traps can be kept. Most importantly, it is partially sheltered from the wind and cannot be seen from far away. I look at this place for a long time and understand that for the first time, we are approaching real resource management. Food is stored separately from materials, materials separately from personal belongings, tools separately from waste. It would seem like a small thing, but stability is built from exactly such small things. Even modern data on early societies shows when groups began storing and protecting resources more systematically, it changed their behavior, routes, and social organization. "The storage area will be here," I say. The scarred man looks at the hollow. "Storage for what? Everything we do not want to lose in a single night." The elder nods. That is reasonable. Mara already begins considering how to reinforce the entrance without unnecessary words. And then something happens that I both expected and did not expect. Outside, the camp shudders at a brief noise. Not an animal, not a falling stone, a human voice. Solitary, high, almost frightened. We all turn around. A boy bursts out of the bushes, the same one we released the day before yesterday. He is out of breath, looks at us with wide eyes, and almost collapses beside the fire. "They are coming." I instantly tense. "Who?" He swallows. People from the southern path, several of them, with spears. They say they want to see your fire and take what you are hiding. That is it. The rumor has reached those who do not want to bargain. These are no longer guests or future allies. This is a test by combat. Mara takes a step forward, instantly shifting into combat readiness. How many of them? 3, maybe 4. The scarred man is already grabbing his spear. The elder does not panic, but quickly leads the teenagers toward the drying rack. The new people who have only just arrived freeze in place and immediately reveal whether they will be useful in a crisis. I look at the camp, the fire, the people, and the storage area. We have only just begun, and I understand that this is the real test. Not of strength, of whether the system can survive the first external pressure. No one rushes into the fight first, I say. We will not let them see fear. Mara, stand on the left, scarred man on the right. Elder, take the children behind the stones. Everyone else remain quiet. Let them think we are calm. Mara gives a brief nod. Finally, something interesting. I take the bone knife in my hands, look at the short line of smoke above the fire, and understand. One stage is about to end. If we succeed, the camp will become not merely a place where people live, it will become a place capable of defending itself. And that is already an entirely different level. The morning that was supposed to be ordinary begins with a scream, not an animal's, a human one. And that is probably the entire problem. An animal warns honestly, while a person arrives having already made a decision. I rush out toward the fire and immediately see that the camp is not burning, collapsing, or drowning in panic. That is worse, because it means the threat is not inside yet. It is outside, and everyone can already feel it. Mara stands to my left, already holding her spear. The elder leads the teenagers behind the stones. The scarred man and 2 new men take positions closer to the southern side of the perimeter. I do not give orders aloud. That is not necessary now. People position themselves where they are most useful. That is a very good sign. That means the base has begun functioning like an organism, not through shouting, but through instinct. The scream repeats, then another one, and immediately afterward, the first person emerges from the bushes. Not alone. 2 follow him. Then another one at a distance, carrying a spear and walking with far too much confidence. They all hold themselves loosely, but their eyes are sharp. Not bandits in the purest sense, not hunters in the full sense. More like inspectors. Scouts from another group. Those who come not to fight immediately, but to see whether something can be taken without a fight. The eldest among them, a tall man with a scar on his neck, takes a step forward and loudly declares, "This is our path." I look at him, at his spear, and at the way he deliberately refuses to smile. A familiar manner, false confidence. He has prepared his face in advance for a conversation in which he wants to look strong even though he came to inspect someone else's fire. "It was yours," I say calmly. "Now you are standing beside our fire." Mara smirks almost imperceptibly. The elder stranger narrows his eyes. Insolent. "Alive," I answer. He shifts his gaze to the drying rack, the perimeter, and the people beside the stones. And I see the calculation click into place inside his head. He realizes that there is no longer a loner here, not someone whose meat can simply be taken. Which means the conversation must be handled more carefully. "We came to look," he says more quietly now. "They say your food does not spoil and your traps catch prey by themselves." "Not by themselves," I answer, "but faster than your legs." One of his people snorts. The second looks around nervously. They clearly expected to see chaos. Instead, they saw order, and that breaks their initiative, because attacking disorder is easy, but attacking something that is already organized is much more dangerous. Mara takes half a step forward. "If you came to bargain, speak directly. If you came to steal, you can start regretting it immediately." I almost smile. She is getting better at sensing the moment, and that is important. Because any ally who knows not only how to strike, but also when to strike, is worth twice as much. The elder stranger looks at her, then at me, then at our perimeter. We have hides, and 1 good hunting bag. I do not answer immediately. A hide and a bag are not merely goods. They are warmth, transportation, carrying capacity, storage. In the stone world, anything that helps preserve a resource is already almost gold. But I do not need gold. I need them to feel that people here know not only how to take, but also how to exchange. What do you want? I ask. He seems to have been waiting for exactly that. Traps, and the right to place our fire beside your perimeter for one night. I do not rush to answer. In essence, this is a test of boundaries. If I allow them too close, I will show weakness. If I refuse, they will leave and return with bad intentions. That means we need a third option. One in which they gain a benefit, but not power. Not one night, I say, but a place at the outer edge and part of the knowledge, yes. In exchange for the hides, the bag, and help with the stones. He frowns. That is too little. It is exactly enough so that you do not forget whom you came to. Silence. Neither friendly nor hostile calculating. And then I understand that a new world has already formed, not around me personally, but around what we have built here. Fire, storage, traps, order. It attracts people in the same way markets and cities attract them in the future. He still thinks he can win through conversation. And I allow him that illusion for a little longer. If you want to test how useful we are, I say, stay until evening, watch how we work, then decide for yourself. He exchanges glances with his people. It seems they are not accustomed to being offered the chance to evaluate a situation instead of simply receiving an order, and that works in my favor. The moment a person begins thinking, he loses part of his aggression. They agree, and that is the first major success of the day. While the strangers sit outside, without going any deeper, I continue my work. We have already accumulated enough material to make not merely a loop trap, but an entire barrier section. Mara, the scarred man, and the new people work together, while the elder keeps the rhythm so that no one shirks. At that moment, for the first time, I feel that the camp is truly beginning to live as a structure rather than as separate, strong individuals. That is exactly why I decide to reinforce the perimeter today. Not tomorrow, not later, now. First, we go to the rocky ridge. I show the place where a narrow passage can be made. Then I explain how to position the rods at an angle so that anyone trying to enter will first catch the noise line and only then reach the center. This is not merely defense. It is a way to force a stranger to reveal himself before he has time to strike. In ancient hunting systems, similar logic restricting movement, forcing movement along a desired route, creating a vulnerable point, was a key part of success. The scarred man listens especially attentively. So you want the enemy to drive himself into a bad position? Yes. And if he is smart? I look at him. Then he will understand it later, and that is also a victory. Mara snorts. This is already starting to resemble normal hunting. Everything is hunting, I answer. The only difference is whom we are catching. When we return, the strangers no longer look as confident. They have seen how we work. They have seen that no one argues over trivialities, that materials are not lying in a pile, but go where they belong. And most importantly, they have seen that I do not carry everything on my own shoulders. We have a division of labor. That is a powerful signal. People from outside begin to understand this is no longer a survival club, but a small system. The elder stranger visibly softens. You are building something larger than a fire. Yes, I answer, and if that frightens you, then you are thinking correctly. His people exchange glances. One even smirks. Good. Now they are not only watching, but absorbing the atmosphere. The rest of the day proceeds surprisingly smoothly. We inspect the new loops, replace some of the old ones, and reinforce the places where the wind blows too strongly through the dry grass. Then I show them how to set a double trap. The first delays, the second secures. This is especially important for small and medium-sized prey that quickly learns to avoid obvious places. That is more work, one of the strangers remarks. At first, yes, I answer. Then there is less running around. And that catches their attention, because they are hunters. What matters to them is not theory, but the final expenditure of energy. If they can spend more time once and then obtain prey more consistently, that is already a benefit. By noon, the strangers finally begin helping, not because they have recognized me as a leader, but because they have recognized the usefulness of the system. And at the first stage, that is more than enough. They carry stones, help with the tension, and listen while Mara shows where the loop has a weak point. Even the scarred man soon stops looking like a guest and begins working as though he has been here for a long time. The system records, the camp has attracted new participants. Risk increases, stability increases too. There it is, the most important pair of words. Every reinforcement creates risk. If you want to grow, you become visible. If you become visible, others want to test you. That means my task is not to avoid the test, but to make it beneficial for me. After a short break, I gather everyone and say, now listen carefully. The outer edge of the perimeter is not for decoration. It must make noise first. If someone comes at night, you will hear not footsteps, but mistakes. The new people nod. The old ones already know this, but they listen too, because repetition is part of learning. I point to the area near the rocky ridge. The storage area will be here. Dry branches, stone, fiber, tools, meat separately, hides separately, and no common piles. Why? One of the teenagers asks. Because a common pile means a common loss. And because you must not search for what you need in the darkness when someone is already walking along your path. The elder nods approvingly. That is the correct order. Mara, standing nearby, glances at me. You are speaking more and more like someone who intends to live here for a long time. I do not answer immediately. Because it is true. I feel less and less like a temporary guest and more like a person who must become part of this world and make it more convenient for himself. If you want to speedrun, I say, you cannot start from zero every day. She smiles slightly. The word is strange, but the idea is clear. By evening, the strangers have completely shifted into working mode. One helps secure the barrier, another brings additional hide and fiber, and a third woman, quiet and attentive, begins weaving new snares under the elder's guidance. And then, I feel the camp ceasing to be closed off. It is already absorbing people rather than merely keeping them around the fire. This is dangerous and useful at the same time, because new people mean new hands, new knowledge, new connections, but also new desires, new fear, and a new possibility of betrayal. Therefore, I decide not to pretend that everything is safe. On the contrary, I show them the rules. Here, no one takes another person's belongings without permission. Here, no one lights a fire wherever they please. Here, no one shouts at night without reason. Here, no one argues beside the perimeter when tracks have been seen. The elder stranger listens and gives a brief nod. Harsh. Harshness is cheaper than loss. He understands that. Good. And by sunset, I can already see the main change of the day. None of yesterday's free people behaves like a random traveling companion. They have already mentally accepted that there is a center here. Not my personal center, but a shared point. This is exactly how the first structures of power arise, not through declarations, but through a habit of order. Before the night shift, I look at the camp and understand. Something larger can already be made from us. We have an outer edge, an inner circle, a food reserve, a division of labor, and the first primitive access rules. It is still very far from a city, but already too close to a tribe to retreat. Mara approaches and quietly says, "Will they stay?" I look at the new people, the old ones, the fire, and the storage area that has only just begun taking shape. If they are smart, yes. And if they are not, I smirk, then we will very quickly see which of us knows how to preserve order. She laughs quietly, almost approvingly. I like it when you speak that way. Night descends quickly, but now I do not feel it as emptiness. I feel it as a test, and that is already a different world. We are no longer merely huddling around the fire. We are building a place capable of withstanding an external gaze, another person's envy, and the first serious attempt at pressure, which means the next step will no longer be about survival. It will be about holding territory. By nightfall, the camp no longer looks relaxed. Even the fire seems to burn in a more disciplined way. People speak less than usual, but they are not rushing around either. This is exactly the tone that appears before a test. No one is shouting yet, but everyone already feels that something serious is about to happen. I stand on the southern side of the perimeter and look toward the place from which the strangers came in the morning. The ones who bargained have already left. Other questions remain, and questions, as I have learned, most often arrive with spears in the Stone Age. Mara approaches me, wiping her hands against her side. Are you sure they will come? Yes. How do you know? Because they saw the fire, the food, and the order. And people hate what they cannot take immediately. She nods, without a smile, without an argument. That means she feels it too. The elder leads the teenagers toward the storage area and tells them to remain closer to the stones. The scarred man checks the tension of the new loops along the outer edge. Shadow, who previously remained silent almost constantly, is now running with water and doing it as though he already understands where he is needed. There it is, the most valuable change. People begin working before they are told because they have already accepted the common threat as their own. The system issues a brief warning: external activity is increasing. I do not smile, because this is the very moment when every mistake becomes expensive, but it is already too late to retreat. If I want the camp to become something larger than a fire with a reserve of meat, it must withstand its first serious pressure, and the pressure arrives almost immediately. First, a rustle, then the cracking of dry branches, then the first silhouette emerges from the darkness. A second follows it. A third moves a little farther away, crouched low, clearly assessing where our entrance is and how quickly we can close the passage. These are no longer scouts. This is a test by force. The strangers do not shout immediately, and that is worse, because a person approaching silently is usually confident that everything has already been decided. Their elder is tall and broad-shouldered, with a hide draped over his shoulders. He holds a spear in his hand and carries it as though he wants to look not like a leader, but like fate itself. "This is the last time," he says loudly. "Give us the meat, the hides, and the place beside the fire, and we will leave." I step out of the fire's shadow just enough for him to see me. No farther. "The last time for what?" I ask. He frowns. "The last time we give you a choice." Mara quietly snorts from the side. She has already understood that in essence we never had a choice. And in general, when someone comes onto another person's land and demands their property, he has already made the choice for everyone. "You had a choice," I say, "but you made it stupidly." He takes a step forward and looks at the fire. "There are few of you." I do not answer immediately, because he is right about one thing: there are still few of us. But he does not understand the main thing. A few people who know what to do are sometimes stronger than many people who merely came to destroy. "Yes," I finally say, "there are few of us, but we do not stand still." And at that moment, everything begins. The strangers do not charge forward immediately, but in a sudden burst, as they are accustomed to doing while hunting. They expect to crush us with numbers and speed. But that is exactly where they make their mistake. The scarred man pulls the rope, and the first line of noise traps is triggered. Dry branches crack, stones roll down, and one of the strangers stumbles. One more step, and his ankle is caught in a loop. Not fatally, but enough to break the rhythm of the attack. Mara immediately moves to the side and strikes with her spear not at the strongest one, but at the one closest to the passage. The strike is short, precise, without an unnecessary swing. I see that she is now thinking not as a lone huntress, but as part of the structure. And that is incredibly useful. I do not charge straight ahead. Instead, I throw dry resin and thin branches that I deliberately kept nearby into the fire. The smoke suddenly thickens, the fire flares brighter, and the attackers' faces lose clarity for a second. This is not magic, but the use of what is already available. Light, smoke, fear, confined space. In ancient times, fire was often attributed not only a culinary role, but also a defensive one. It changed the behavior of animals and people, and made the area around a camp risky for attackers. One of the strangers still breaks through farther, but no longer at the pace he expected. The elder throws a bundle of stones beneath his feet, and he falls to one knee. Shadow, who previously barely spoke, suddenly does something no one expected from him. He throws a handful of fine dirt into the man's face. The stranger loses his rhythm. That is enough for the scarred man to step forward and strike him across the shoulder with the shaft. Not fatally, but enough to remove him from the fight. I hear the second stranger swear and step backward. The third never entered the perimeter at all, and now he is already retreating, realizing that the entrance is far more dangerous than it appeared from outside. And yet the elder does not retreat immediately. He has been moving toward this moment for too long. "You think having fire makes you stronger?" I look at him and understand that right now we need not merely to win. We need to put an end to this, or at least draw a line he will no longer want to cross. "No," I say. "We are stronger because we know how to preserve what we obtain, and you still live as though tomorrow does not exist." He wants to answer, but at that moment, Mara takes another step. Not threateningly, simply enough for him to understand. If he moves forward, he will be met not one-on-one, but by the entire group. And then the stranger finally breaks, not because I defeated him, but because he saw that there were no longer loners around the fire here. There is a system here, small perhaps, but already functioning. He retreats. This is not over yet. "Of course," I say, but this is no longer your victory. They leave without running, outwardly proud. But I see one of them holding his shoulder and the second looking back at the perimeter almost every 3 steps. That means they carried fear away with them after all. When silence returns, the camp does not erupt in celebration, and that is good too. The people are too tired to celebrate. They simply look at one another and then at me with that same cautious gratitude that is stronger than any loud words. The elder is the first to lower her spear. They will not return today. Not today, I answer, but they will return later if they decide we are weak. The scarred man gives a crooked smirk. Then they will have to think more slowly, or not think at all, Mara says. I see in her that same excitement that appears in people only after a real test. Not madness, not a desire to fight for the sake of fighting, but a taste for the fact that their group endured. That is extremely important, because the experience of victory is remembered by the body, not only by the mind. It is only after the attack that I finally understand. If we want to survive, we need more than merely a perimeter. We need defensive depth. A transition from one line to several. I immediately begin assigning new tasks. Tomorrow we make a second circle. Not a wall, a sector. If someone breaks through the outer noise line, he must enter a narrow passage. There, he can be slowed down and cut off from the others. The elder nods. And who will build it? Everyone in turns. The teenager looks at me with interest. Is it difficult? Difficult only on the first day. Afterward, it will be frightening for those who try to enter. That sounds harsh enough for everyone to understand. I am not planning to hide. I am planning to build the defense so that attacking becomes unprofitable. At night, we gather trophies from the battlefield. Not many, but enough. 1 spear, a piece of leather, a bundle of fiber, and several stones that will be useful for tension. I do not like wars over resources, but in this world, every fight must bring something. Otherwise, it is merely destruction. The system records? Successful defense of the camp. Combat experience gained. Collective stability strengthened. This is perhaps the most pleasant type of notification during all this time. Not about killing, about the ability to endure. When everything has almost fallen silent, I notice that Shadow, the same silent boy, is sitting beside the storage area and sorting through the new fiber. He is doing it very carefully and attentively, as though afraid of making a mistake. I approach. What are you doing? He flinches but does not drop the material. I am checking the length. Why? He hesitates, so that the loops are identical. I look at him and understand that a rare type of person is standing before me. Not a strong man, not a brute, not a leader, but someone who notices details, and in a system that is often more valuable than it seems. Can you do this? I ask. He gives a barely noticeable nod. Yes. Then starting tomorrow, you are responsible for the loops and knots. His eyes open wide. Me? You? He clearly did not expect to be given a real task, and that is useful. People who live on the edge of a group for too long often break from being unnoticed. But if you give them a function, they suddenly grow. Mara, who has been watching from a distance, approaches and quietly says, "You find useful people quickly. It is cheaper than searching for strong ones." She remains silent for a second, then smirks. "You are definitely not from this century." I do not answer. Because in a way, she is right. The next morning brings not another battle, but the consequences of the battle. The strangers do not return immediately, but their attack changes everything. People now look at the perimeter differently, and at me differently. The very thought that we can be tested and will not break already makes the camp more stable. In ancient societies, where survival depended on small groups, moments like these were critical. Protection from predators, shared work around the fire, distribution of duties, and a system of signals increased the group's chances not merely of surviving the night, but of preserving resources and people. We use the day not to rest, but to make improvements. Together with the scarred man, I build a second entrance junction. Mara teaches 2 newcomers how to hold a spear, not merely for striking, but for blocking. The elder and the woman with the fiber begin making new snares thinner, almost invisible ones. Shadow ties knots. The teenagers carry stones. And then I suddenly understand something else. The camp has developed a distribution not only of tasks, but also of status. People know who is responsible for what, and that means the first social roles are appearing. This is no longer merely a team, it is the beginning of a structure. By noon, I decide to do what I have wanted to do for a long time. Inspect the distant path leading to the ruins, which are visible on the horizon as a dark, slightly sunken patch of ground. I have seen them more than once, but I was never able to reach them. Now, after the attack, it is especially important for me to understand whether there is anything there that can be used. Any old structure, any hollow in the stone, any convenient passage is an opportunity to strengthen us without unnecessary risk. Mara comes with me. Are you sure it is safe there? No, but I am sure that if there are materials there, we need to see them first. She nods. Then, let us go. We walk together and barely speak. Only the wind and the occasional cracking of dry branches beneath our feet. And then I feel how everything is slowly but surely shifting. We are no longer merely two people beside a fire. We are already two links in the same network, where each understands that they depend on the other no less than on themselves. On the horizon, the stones of the ancient structure look almost dead. But when we come closer, I see traces not only of destruction, but also of use. A path worn between the slabs, a hollow where one can hide from the wind, a platform on which something heavy may once have been placed. I touch the stone with my palm and feel the dry, almost forgotten precision of someone else's work, and something immediately clicks in my head. This can be more than merely inspected. It can be incorporated into our system. If there is a safe niche here, it can be used as storage. If there is a narrow passage, it can be turned into an additional defensive line. If there is a naturally elevated edge, the path can be observed from there. Mara squats beside me and looks around with a professional squint. This place can be defended. And used, I answer. She nods. You are thinking several steps ahead again. There is no other way. The system, as though confirming my thoughts, issues a new notification. Suitable expansion point discovered. Option available. External outpost zone. There it is. Another lever. Not merely a camp, already a network of points. We return by evening, and I already know what comes next. First, reinforce the second circle. Then use the ruins as an additional node. Then, expand gathering and storage. And afterward, if it works, build something resembling a small territory where every place has a function. Because today's battle showed the main thing. We can no longer simply be driven away from a single fire. If someone wants to break us, they will have to face a system, and the system has already awakened. After the nighttime attack, the camp does not rest. It digests what happened like an animal digesting difficult prey, slowly, carefully, and while watching for someone else who might approach. It is after nights like these that a group either falls apart or becomes stronger, and I can see from the people's faces that we have not fallen apart yet. In the morning, the first place I go is not the fire, but the perimeter. I examine where the attackers tested the weak points, where the branches made noise, and where they stepped most heavily. These are no longer merely tracks, they are lessons. From them, we can understand how they will act next time. In the ancient world, the one who survives is not the one who merely fought off the attack, but the one who understood after the battle exactly what the enemy had tried to break. Mara catches up with me at the southern line. You barely slept all night, because now we know where they will apply pressure. She looks down at the place where a stranger stepped into the noise line yesterday. And what now? Now we build a second layer. She smirks. I already knew you would say that. That is how the next day begins. Not with rest, but with correcting weaknesses. We reinforce the outer edge, but now I am not merely setting new sticks and loops. I am creating depth. The first layer must make noise and slow them down. The second must narrow the passage. The third must give us the opportunity to see where the pressure is coming from. This is no longer merely a fence. It is a small defensive system in which every zone has its own function. The elder watches me and nods when I show how to arrange the stones in a semicircle. They will not be able to rush straight in this way. Exactly, they will have to go where we want them to. The scarred man, squatting beside us, adds, and if they move slowly, we will see them earlier. Yes, I answer, and if we see them earlier, we can decide whom to strike first. This is already a real shift in thinking. Not fighting, but controlling distance. Not only defense, but coercion. By noon, we move on to the storage area. Yesterday's battle showed that an unprotected resource is merely bait. That means everything valuable must not simply be piled up, but structured. I create separate piles: dry branches, stones, fiber, finished loops, spear blanks, meat, hides. Now every object has its place, and this immediately changes people's behavior. They rush around less because they know where to look. The system displays a brief update: storage structured, losses from chaos reduced. Level available, material discipline. I smirk. It is a strange feeling to celebrate not a killing, but order. But that is exactly how a development speedrun works. You accumulate small improvements until they become the new normal. In the middle of the day, Shadow approaches me. He is holding fresh loops and clearly looks nervous. I rewove the knots the way you showed me. I take one of the loops, test the tension, then another. Everything is even, almost too good for a first attempt. Excellent, I say. He freezes as though he does not believe it. Really? Yes. You are precise. That is useful. He lowers his eyes, but I can see that he is pleased. And this is also an important part of the camp. People must see not only threats and burdens, but also recognition. Without it, they will quickly become either lazy or bitter. Mara, who has been watching from a distance, approaches later. You made his face look as though he caught the largest prey. For him, this is large prey, I answer. For the first time, he made something that does not need to be redone. She shakes her head. You turn everything into a system, because otherwise, everything turns into chaos. She thinks for a second and quietly answers, I am beginning to like it. That is almost an admission. Not of feelings, no, but definitely of trust. After noon, I decide to return to the ruins we found earlier. Not because I have suddenly developed a fascination with ancient stones, but because now we have people capable of maintaining the camp without me for at least part of the day. And that means I can search not only for materials, but also for expansion nodes. If the camp becomes the center, then the ruins can become an external outpost zone, a storage area, an observation point, or a passage toward new resources. Mara comes with me again. Are you sure this place can be used? No, but I am sure that if we do not use it, someone else will. She nods. That is enough. We walk together and barely speak. The road to the ruins is already familiar, but now it feels different. Before, it was merely a strange, half-collapsed point on the horizon. Now it is a potential node in the network. And this is an important feeling. When you begin perceiving the space not as a field around the camp, but as a map of your own possibilities, the world becomes smaller and more manageable. The ruins greet us with dry stone, a worn path, and a narrow platform where one can stand without stepping into the open. I immediately understand. This is not merely the remains of an old structure. It is an excellent observation post. Part of the supplies can be hidden here, the lower path is visible from here, and guests can be met here before they reach the camp. Mara sees it too. The entrance can be watched from here, and false signals can be placed, I add. She frowns. False ones? Yes. If someone sees movement here, or hears a sound, they will think the camp is closer than it really is. She understands quickly. That means strangers can be led in the wrong direction. Exactly. This is no longer defense. This is controlling perception, and it is no less important. While we inspect the platform, I notice tracks. Not ours. Old, but fresh enough to say, someone else has also taken an interest in this place. That means my thought is correct. The ruins are already attracting attention. If we want to bring them under our control, we need to do it quickly. I sit down on a stone and remain silent for a while. Mara does not disturb me. She is already accustomed to the fact that my pauses are not confusion, but calculation. An external outpost can be built here, I finally say. Storage and observation, and a trap. Against whom? Against everyone who decides that the camp is easy prey. She looks at me with a slight smirk. You no longer hope that no one will come to us. I only hope that they come to the place where we are ready. It is an honest answer, and she likes it. We return closer to evening, and I'm greeted by an almost unexpectedly calm order. People are working beside the fire. The storage area no longer looks like a pile, and the outer line is gradually taking shape. That is a good sign. The camp knows how to function without my constant control. And that means we can think not only about rescue, but also about growth. The system displays external outpost zone potentially suitable, territorial expansion available. And then, for the first time, I seriously begin thinking that our group has already stopped being merely a group. Yes, we still have no generally accepted name, no official leader, no hide banner on a stick. But we already have a structure, duties, rules, and centers of power. In real ancient times, this was exactly what made human groups resilient. coordination, distribution of effort, shared defense against predators, and more reliable access to food. After dinner, I gather the closest people around the fire, not everyone. Only those who no longer merely work but can make decisions. Mara, the elder, the scarred man, Shadow, and 2 newcomers. Listen carefully, I say. What we have now cannot be left to chance. If someone comes at night, they must not see a fire. They must see a problem. The scarred man smirks. What does that mean? It means we create the appearance of 1 entrance, but in reality, there will be 2. The first is false, the second is ours. Mara laughs quietly. Sounds like a trap for people? Exactly. The elder narrows her eyes, and if they take the false one, then they will waste time, and time in battle is almost victory. Shadow, who is usually silent, suddenly asks, and if they are smart? I look at him and answer without pathos. Then they will still have to check, and checking already makes them slower. This is important. I want people to understand, a trap is not only a pit or a loop. A trap is space that forces the enemy to make mistakes. After that, I show them another part of the plan, how to use the ruins as part of the defense, not as a separate place, but as an external eye. If someone approaches the camp, the ruins can become an observation, an early warning point. The idea creates lively interest among everyone because it makes us not only more protected, but smarter as well. Mara grunts. You are already looking at the camp like a city, I correct her. For now, like a center. And afterward? I look at the fire. Afterward, like something that must be held. She does not answer, but her face shows that she likes the idea. At night, I cannot fall asleep for a long time. Not because of fear, because my head is too busy. I mentally go through everything we have already built. The fire, the drying rack, the perimeter, the storage area, the second line, the external node at the ruins, and I understand that our system has already grown from the survival stage into the holding stage. And that is a crucial transition, because one can survive on instinct, but holding something requires discipline, structure, and constant work. At that exact moment, it becomes clear to me, if we do not reinforce the outpost zone and increase the number of people in the coming days, they will begin testing us again. That means the next step must be not only defensive, but also social. We need to make this a place that attracts not only those who are afraid, but also those who know how to be useful. And that is no longer merely the task of a hunter. It is the task of a builder. By this morning, I already know. If I want the camp to grow into something larger than a fortified fire, I need more than merely additional people. I need tools that make people stronger. And that is exactly why today we are not going for meat. Today, we are going for the things from which meat, spears, loops, fire, and order can be made. I stand beside the storage area and sort through what we have. Stone, flint, bone, fiber, resin, several dry hides. For now, all of this looks like a pile of separate objects, but I can already see future tools within them. Stone can be turned into a blade, bone into a needle, awl, or hook, fiber into cord, a loop, or netting, resin into fastening material. Even dry hide can be used not only as a covering, but also as packaging and protection against moisture. In ancient societies, it was precisely the combination of such materials that made more complex methods of obtaining and preserving food possible. Mara approaches me with a spear on her shoulder. You are sorting everything again. Yes. And what are we doing today? Today we make tools instead of merely using what we find. She looks at the pile of resources. Sounds like a lot of work. Because it is a lot of work. I do not smile, because this is an important day. If yesterday we held the camp, then today we must learn to produce not only food, but also the means of obtaining it. And the sooner the others understand this, the faster we will move from the accidentally survive stage to the can repeat the result stage. The elder is already waiting nearby with 2 teenagers and Shadow. The scarred man has taken several even stone plates out of his bag, while the new people have brought fiber and dry branches. Good. There are enough materials for the first real crafting cycle. I begin with stone. Not with anything heroic. With an ordinary blank, I strike flint against flint at the correct angle to produce a sharp flake. A second strike, and it is no longer merely a piece, but a working edge. I show everyone how important it is not to break the stone chaotically, but to direct the crack toward the place where it will create the required edge. This is not magic. It is control over form. The scarred man watches with interest. It is as though you know where the stone will crack, because it almost always cracks the same way if you do not strike it like a madman. Mara smirks. That already sounds like your philosophy. I hand her the first blank. Try it. She strikes a couple of times, twists her lips, then manages to produce a cleaner flake. Better already. That means she can do it. That is more important than any compliment. If a person can repeat a technology rather than merely watch it, that technology becomes established within the group. Then I take a bone and begin making an awl. Not too long, not too thin, simply straight, strong, and convenient for piercing hide. That may sound modest, but in the ancient world, a needle and an awl are not small things. They mean clothing, repairs, bags, and connections between objects. Without them, you simply live exposed to the air. With them, you begin protecting yourself from the environment. What is this for? Shadow asks. For hides, I answer, and for bags. He turns the tool in his hands. We will be able to carry more? Yes, and for longer. His eyes widen slightly. Good. People quickly understand the usefulness of something that makes life easier if it is demonstrated on a practical level. The next goal is fastening. I take resin, heat it beside the fire until it becomes viscous, and mix it with fine powder made from dried clay and charcoal dust. The result is a stronger compound that holds stone on a shaft better. It is not a perfect glue in the modern sense, but it is already more than merely a sticky substance. The idea is the same as in ancient times, strengthening a natural material with additives so that it withstands stress better. Mara watches the mixture and wrinkles her nose. It smells terrible, but it holds better. You always choose what works instead of what is pleasant. That is the entire point. I make the first wrapping around the shaft, then a second layer, press the stone edge on top, and allow everything to harden. The result is crude, but it will no longer fall apart after the first strike. And then, for the first time, I understand that the camp is ready to accept not only do as I say, but also do as I showed you. That is a very big difference. In the first case, knowledge lives in only one person. In the second, it already lives within the group. The system confirms. First stable composite tool created. Further improvement of fastening available. There it is. The sweetest sound in this world is not a victorious scream, but a message stating that a technology can be reproduced. After lunch, I gather the people around the new working area and announce the next cycle. We are making not one knife, but a series. Not one loop, but a set. Not one stick, but identical blanks. The elder understands immediately. So that there is no wasted time? Yes. And so that anyone can replace another person if they become tired. This is especially important. Because if a technology depends on only one mind, it dies with that person. And I need a system that will continue working even if one day I collapse with a fever, become wounded, or simply cannot maintain the pace. The scarred man nods. That means there will be a common standard. Exactly. I am not sure they call it a standard, but the meaning is already clear, and that is enough. For the next stage, I take the crafting area beside the fire and turn it into a primitive workshop. No walls from the future, simply a designated zone where tools are kept separately from food and blanks separately from finished items. Mara hands me the flint. Do you really think something big will come from this? It already is. She looks at the new knives, the awl, the loops, and the neatly arranged stones. For now, it is merely a great deal of fuss. In the future, people will pay for such fuss with their lives, I answer, because it determines whether a group can survive the winter. She frowns, but does not argue. And then I do something I have wanted to do for a long time, but kept postponing because of the lack of time and people. I begin making a composite trap with separate tension units. First, 2 side supports, then a low crossbar, then a cord that holds not only the loop, but also the signal. If an animal or person touches the line, the trap will not merely catch them, but also warn us. This is already the next level beyond an ordinary loop. Shadow looks at the knots, blinks, and unexpectedly says, "This could be set up faster if the parts were made identical." I freeze. That is exactly what I have been waiting for. Yes. And how did you understand that? He blushes. It is just, if one part is always identical, it is easier to prepare the next one. I nod. Correct. From this moment onward, you are responsible for the consistency of the knots. He even holds his breath. Me, you. And this is already a true establishment of people within the system, not merely a task, a function. He is not a leader, not a fighter, but he is someone who can ensure repeatability. and repeatability is the foundation of craftsmanship. By evening, we already have several working tools, a new stone blade, an awl for hides, improved fastening, the first batch of identical loops, a signaling trap, and a separate place for processing materials. The system issues a new notification, workshop stabilized. Camp productivity increased. I allow myself a brief breath. This is not a victory in the usual sense. But this is exactly what made it worth spending the entire day striking stones together. Because from now on, we can produce not only food, but also the means of obtaining the next food. And then a small but very important conversation takes place. Mara remains nearby while the others disperse to their tasks. You know this is beginning to change us? I know, and you too. I turn toward her, especially me. She leans on her spear. Before, you constantly talked about survival, but now you are already talking about production. Because if you merely survive, chance controls you. But if you produce, you control the world. She laughs quietly. That already sounds like something a person who wants to rule would say. I do not answer immediately, because she has struck the point, not in the sense of power for power's sake. In the sense of managing resources and relationships, if I truly want to accelerate development, I will have to lead not only myself, but others as well. And that same evening, another idea appears. If we have a workshop, then the next step can be not merely strengthening the traps, but creating a more complex system of storage and transportation. We already have an awl, which means we can stitch hides into bags and cases. We can make cases for stone, portable bundles for dried meat, and protective wrappings against moisture. Is that a small thing? No, it is logistics. And logistics is always what makes a group more stable. I immediately give Shadow and the fiber woman an order. Tomorrow we sew the first proper bag. They exchange glances. From hide, fiber, and an awl, so that tools can be carried without losing them along the way. The elder, hearing this, nods approvingly. That is useful. I no longer merely hear agreement. I feel knowledge beginning to enter everyday life. And that is the moment when technology becomes culture. Night comes quickly. It is quiet in the south, but I still keep in mind that the external threat has not gone anywhere. But now we have more than a perimeter and a storage area. We have a workshop, a set of tools, and the first mechanisms of repeatability. And the longer I look at the fire, the more clearly I understand. I am no longer merely surviving in the Stone Age. I am building a material foundation for accelerated development. First the tool, then repetition, then the standard. And after that civilization, the next morning, I decide that it is no longer enough merely to make things by hand. It is time to make things according to a procedure. This is more important than any individual knife because a knife breaks, but a procedure remains. I gather the people around the new workshop and immediately show them the order of work. First the stone, then the edge, then the fastening, then inspection, then a reserve. No rushing, no it will do. If we want to accelerate development, we need not only a tool, but also repeatability in its production. In archaeology, composite tools with fastenings and adhesives are considered a sign of serious planning. Several stages, materials, and the future form of the object must be kept in mind. Mara stands nearby and watches my diagram on the ground. You are drawing with a stick again. Yes, it is faster than explaining with words. She nods. And what is this line? It is the sequence. If it is disrupted, the tool will be weak. The scarred man looks at me no longer as a strange loner, but as a person trying to create a craft. And that is exactly what I am striving for. First, we make a series of identical stone blanks, not individual beautiful blades, but working ones. The same angle, the same length, the same thickness. It is not impressive, but it is very important, because when you have a series, you can replace something broken without stopping all the work. Shadow, who is responsible for the knots, immediately picks up the principle. If they are identical, they are easier to store, and easier to repair, I add, and easier to make again, the elder says. There, exactly. This is already the thinking of a production chain, not a single strike. Then I move everyone on to composite fastening. We already have resin, charcoal powder, and clay. Now I want to make the joint hold not for one day, but longer. Mix slowly, heat evenly, let the compound stretch instead of burn. The chemistry here is simple, but it must be followed. And it was precisely through such combinations, resin, mineral, heat, wood, that ancient people obtained durable composite tools and more reliable handles. Mara takes one of the blanks and tests the seam. Already better. This is not better yet, I answer. It is only repeatable. She raises an eyebrow. It is as though you deliberately downplay success, because success without a standard quickly falls apart. We make several sets at once. One spare knife, one spare awl, one spare loop. I even show separately how to dry and store fiber so that it does not come apart from moisture. For this, we make a small hanging section in the shade, not in dampness, not beside the fire, but where the material will remain usable. This is a small thing, but it matters. Good material, if stored incorrectly, turns into rubbish before you even use it. The system records, primary standardization of the craft introduced, material losses reduced. I almost laugh. It seems I now have internal survival accounting. After that, I move the group on to an even more interesting task: composite traps. Until now, we made loops and noise lines. Now I want to create a modular system. Separate supports, a separate loop, a separate signal, a separate fastener. The point is that one element can be replaced without rebuilding everything. And this is already a serious step toward technology rather than mere manual dexterity. The scarred man helps with the frame. Why so many parts? Because if one part breaks, the entire trap does not die. He frowns, but understands. Then it lasts longer. Exactly. Mara immediately picks up the idea, and it can be set faster if all the parts are identical. I nod. Yes. And this is important for hunting, because then more points can be set in a single day. She looks at me with the expression I already know. Respect mixed with caution. She likes that technology makes people more useful, but she is still checking whether it will detach us from reality. At noon, we go to the external outpost zone by the ruins. I want to turn it into a full technological node. For this, we need not merely stones and space, but a working area. First, I show how to make a narrow table from a flat stone. Blanks can be chipped on it without losing the pieces in the dirt. Then I organize a place for the resin and a separate shelf for finished elements. Nothing luxurious, but now the tools are not lying around wherever they happen to fall. This already strongly resembles a production area. Shadow looks at all of this and quietly asks, "And if it rains?" "Then the materials will be inside the shelter," I answer. That is why the next step is protection from moisture. The elder nods. "I can do that." "Good. Then your task is to dry the hide and make sure the fiber does not get wet." She does not argue. She likes it when the task is clear. And here I take the next technological step. I show how to make a dense, portable tool case from hides and fiber. Not a bag in the modern sense, but a rigid bundle in which flint, an awl, spare resin, and small trap parts can be carried. This sharply increases mobility, and in archaeology, solutions like these cases, fastenings, composite handles, spare components are considered not merely convenient, but a sign of more complex cognitive and social behavior. Mara immediately understands the idea. Then a person can go farther without losing everything along the way, yes, and can make repairs on the way. She nods. It is almost like a backpack. Almost. By evening, we already have the first batch of technological kits: a stone blank, a handle, fastening compound, an awl, a loop, spare fiber, a carrying case. The system updates the entry. Technological kit stabilized. Expansion available complex tool. There it is. I look at it and feel almost physical satisfaction, not from beauty, from the fact that the object can now be reproduced. And then Mara calls me. She is already sitting at the edge of the ruins and working with some old stone. Look, I approach. There is a natural hollow in the stone, almost round and convenient. What is this? It looks like a storage place. I look more closely and suddenly understand, yes, this may be not merely a niche, but a base for something, perhaps for pounding, perhaps for processing hard seeds, perhaps for temporarily securing blanks. And then a new idea clicks in my mind. If we want to develop tools, we need not only to chop and cut, but also to process material more precisely. And for that, primitive holders, stops, and molds will be useful. This can be used as a support, I say, for drilling, grinding, or holding a piece while it is being processed. Mara furrows her brow. You already see machines and stones. What else can you do if you want to accelerate? She laughs. You do not know how to simply live at all. That is the problem. We return to the camp late, but with the feeling that we have gained a new layer of development. Not only food, not only defense. Now we have technology as a process. Next, I move on to something I have wanted to try for a long time, more complex fastenings. If we know how to make composite tools, then we can try a more reliable system of joint stone, bone, and wood in one construction. I show how to make a stop so that the stone tip does not shift along the shaft. Then, how to use a thin wrap of hide strap over the resin. This is a simple version of ancient hafting, but already complex enough for the weapon not to be disposable. The scarred man examines the new tip and says, "Now it looks like a real tool instead of luck." Exactly. Shadow carefully tries on the carrying case and smiles for the first time, not timidly, but genuinely. Now several of them can be carried at once. Yes. He looks at me as though I have just given him an entire new world, and perhaps, for him, that is exactly what it is. By nightfall, I finally sit beside the fire and for the first time, do not think about the next attack. I think about the next technological step. If we already have standardized tools and composite implements, then the logical next step is more precise processing. Drilling, grinding, perhaps the simplest containers, more complex nets, storing reserves for a long time. None of this looks like a great leap on its own, but together it is already beginning to change the way of life. Mara sits beside me. Well then, genius, what now? I look at the fire and at the tools lying nearby, not as a pile anymore, but as a set. Now we learn to make things that improve other things, she snorts. That sounds very much like you, because that is acceleration. And for the first time in a long while, I feel not merely survival and not merely power over a place. I feel the birth of a craft, and a craft is no longer a camp. It is a future that has acquired a form. Morning begins with me no longer seeing merely a camp before me. I see a line of production, defense, and storage that has finally begun to form into a system. And now, when we have standardized blanks, composite fastening, and the first repeatable tools, I want to take the next step, not merely gathering things, but adjusting them for a task. I gather the people around the workshop and lay out everything we have before them. Stone blanks, wooden handles, resin, charcoal dust, clay, and all, new hide straps, and 2 almost identical traps that I deliberately made different only in small details. Mara looks at this pile and narrows her eyes. You are building something more complicated than you say again, because that makes it easier to understand where the object's weak point is. She takes one of the handles, runs her finger along the fastening, and nods. Then today will be about adjustment. Exactly. I do not merely want to make another good spear. I want people to begin seeing the difference between a tool as an object and a tool as a system. In ancient composite tools, this was critical. The stone, handle, and adhesive worked together, which meant that one had to think not only about the shape of the tip, but also about how it would behave under stress. The elder, as always, understands the task faster than the others, so we will make not merely identical things, but things for different roles. Yes, one hunting tip, another cutter, a third awl, a fourth trap. The scarred man smirks. Finally, you speak like someone who knows what he wants. I do know. Only now, I want everyone to know how to do it. First of all, we work on the fastening. I show how to change the resin compound so that it behaves differently. More charcoal, stronger, but more brittle. More clay, more stable, but heavier. Less heat, sets more slowly. More sets faster, but holds small parts worse. This is no longer merely gluing, but almost miniature materials engineering. Shadow looks at the mixture and quietly asks, "Can it be made to hold without breaking?" "It can," I answer, "but for that the proportions must be selected." He nods and no longer looks timid. Now he looks like a student who understands for the first time that an object can not only be used, but adjusted. I give him a task. You are responsible for recording the proportions. He blinks. Recording? I point to a flat stone where I have already started making short notches, like this. One sign, one proportion. If the compound works, remember it. If it does not, that too. Mara snorts. You want us to keep a stone notebook? Yes. And then that same smirk appears on her face, one that has long since lost any mockery. I will remember that. Excellent. Because I want to move from isolated experience to repeatable knowledge, And that means we need a prototype of record keeping, not in the modern sense, but already as the memory of technology. This is not merely convenient. It makes it possible not to lose a successful recipe when one person leaves, becomes ill, or makes a mistake. After that, I switched to the second large section, the assembly table. Together with the scarred man and 2 newcomers, we level a flat stone, place it on stable supports, and make a shelf from branches beside it where the parts will lie by category. This seems minor, but this is exactly how a real workshop begins. When every element lies in its proper place, assembly becomes faster and mistakes become more noticeable. This is no longer a fire, the elder says quietly, examining our work. No, I answer, this is a production zone. She nods. Then it must have rules. It already does. I say them aloud. Stones separately, fastening separately, handles separately, finished tools separately. Anything broken goes straight to repair. The teenager snorts. And if everything is mixed together, then tomorrow you will search for a bone in a pile of rubbish when you need it in order not to die. He falls silent. Good. He remembered. Now I move on to tools that can not only be carried, but processed more precisely. For this, we need a stop, a holder, and a grinding surface. We use a flat stone and make 2 hollows in it, one for holding a piece of bone, the other for securing a wooden blank. This already strongly resembles a primitive machine, although none of us would call it that, of course. Mara squats beside me and watches. You have invented another way to make everything slower, but better. That is exactly how a good tool appears. She takes the bone, places it in the hollow, and begins grinding. And what will we get? An even edge, a better hole, fewer cracks, she nods. Then thinner things can be made. Yes. And that is important because crude technology always reaches a limit, but precise technology continues growing. Here, for the first time, I say it aloud. The next level is no longer hunting. The next level is material processing. The phrase makes even me stop for a second, because I understand we are already beginning the transition from gathering to craftsmanship. After lunch, I take the elder and shadow to a separate area. Right now, I need not so much labor as record keeping. We create the first system of marks. On one stone, a sign for successful fastening. On another, for a successful tip. On a third, for good fiber. For now, it is very crude, but the meaning is clear. Do not rely on one person's memory, but preserve information in a simple physical form. Shadow looks confused at first. Is this to remember? Yes. And if someone does not understand, then they ask. And we all read the signs in the same way. The elder immediately grasps the point. So this is a language for things. I look at her and smile briefly. Exactly, the language of technology. She straightens. This is already serious. And yes, it is serious. Because as soon as we have even a primitive system of recording, production stops depending only on hands. It begins to depend on procedure and the transfer of knowledge. This is an enormous transition. By evening, I decide to make a demonstration for everyone, not because I like performing, but because the group needs to see the result of adjustment. I assemble 3 versions of the same tool, a rigid tip for piercing, a wider cutter, a compact working scraper. Each has its own fastening, balance, and weight. I give them in turn to Mara, the scarred man, and Shadow. Try each one. Mara immediately feels the difference. This one is better for striking. Yes. And this one for butchering. Correct. The scarred man turns the third one in his hand and nods. This one can be held for a long time and not dropped. There it is, the moment when technology stops being an abstraction and begins matching a task. This kind of specialization is a distinguishing feature of an advanced composite tool. It does not merely exist, it performs one task better than another. The system records, set of specialized tools created, branch unlocked, functional differentiation. I almost laugh. Everything is fitting together too smoothly, but this is exactly why I started all of it. Not merely to make many things, to make things different and useful. Then I take the stone with the notches and show everyone our stone notebook. This is now stored here, not inside my head. Mara slowly nods. Then if you disappear, everything will not vanish. Exactly. The silence afterward is brief, but very important. For the first time, people understand that knowledge can be separated from a specific person. For my goal, this is critically important. The scarred man is the first to break the silence. Then you really are not building a camp. Then what? He looks at the workshop, the stands, the sorting, the stone marks. You are building something that can live without you. I do not answer immediately, because he has said exactly what I have been leading toward for a long time. In the evening, we bring the new tools to the fire and begin comparing them by wear. Some hold better, others cut more sharply, others are more comfortable in the hand. I make people not merely use them, but note where their hands hurt, where the grip slips, and where the fastening breaks. This is almost a field test, and it is incredibly important. Mara rubs her palm after several cuts. This grip is better. Why? The weight lies closer to the palm. Exactly. That means we change the balance next time. She nods and gives me a look that contains not only respect now, but genuine involvement. She helps me not as a huntress, as a co-creator. And here I understand that I have reached the main thing. We now have not only tools, we have a workshop, records, standards, testing, differentiation by function, and the first signs of technological memory. This is the turning point. Not the most spectacular victory, not a loud battle, but the birth of a process that can be repeated, improved, and passed on. Before going to sleep, I look once more at the stone notebook and the arranged tools. The exhaustion is immense, but it is pleasant exhaustion, the kind that comes when a day has not merely passed, but changed something. Mara sits down beside me. What comes next? I look at the fire and do not hurry to answer. Next, we will make tools begin helping to make new tools. She smirks. Now that sounds exactly like you, and I understand that this is what I wanted to say earlier, only now it came out correctly.